Welcome to HP Fanfiction. Support me by subscribing the channel. Also, like and share the video to keep me motivated to make more videos like these. Lord Voldemort looked upon Pettigrew as he entered, clutching the early edition of the Daily Prophet that his master had requested, trembling as he bumbled his way towards him. The Dark Lord was ever losing his patience with the ineptitude of his subordinate and was counting down the minutes until he would acquire a new body. The rat would be the first to die, and then the two Potter brats would follow. "That will be all, Wormtail," he wheezed. Pettigrew offered a pathetic bow as he sputtered incoherently and quickly made his exit. Voldemort's lips curled in distaste at the display before he turned his attention to the front page of the periodical. Triwizard Tragedy by Rita Skeeter. The recently reinstated Triwizard tournament came under heavy scrutiny last night as one of the dragons used in the first task of the competition was killed. The Hungarian Horntail, unnamed, fell victim to what was later learned to be a rupturing curse to one of its glands, causing the creature to burst into flames, eventually bringing about its demise. The champion it faced, Harry Black, the wayward son of James and Lily Potter and surprise addition to the tournament, was said to be recovering well from his own injuries sustained during the event. It is a very unfortunate incident, and one we have investigated thoroughly. Since doing so, we are in agreement that Mr. Black carried out his task within the rules and the resulting death of the dragon was but an accident, Bartemius Crouch, head of the Department of International Magical Cooperation, had to say. "Mr. Black will not be penalized or punished as the score he received reflects," he added. Many, however, are not satisfied with the investigation, and the organizers of the tournament are under fire from many sources. Charlie Weasley, a worker from the Dragon Reserve in which the creatures were supplied from, had this to say. "We are all devastated at the loss of one of the dragons. We were assured that they would be safe. Mr. Black fired only what can be deemed a lethal curse, which caused the death of our Horntail, and we will be seeking recompense from the House of Black for his actions, and also the body governing the tournament." This unpleasant outcome aside, the first event of the task has been heralded by many as quite the success. All four champions were triumphant in their attempts, with none being seriously injured. Harry Black, despite the outcome of his portion of the task, is in the lead, having been awarded 45 points, followed by Victor Crumb on 44. Fleur Delacour sits third in the standings, having accumulated a score of 42, and Hogwarts champion Cedric Diggory is in fourth place on 41 points. The Dark Lord discarded the paper as he pondered his next move, pleased that the Potter boy was playing his part, unwittingly as it was. Barty had explained the boy's association with the Black family and the fact that he had taken their name, but it was of no consequence. The brat could call himself Merlin if he so wished. He would still always be Harry Potter, the boy that vanished. He did, however, remain an enigma to Lord Voldemort. Try as he might, the memory of Halloween 1981 remained elusive. Still, he remembered crossing the boundary of the property and knew that he conversed with the rat, but then he drew a blank. Often, he would dream of the bright flashing light of the killing curse and would wake immediately after in excruciating pain. But then nothing. The memory he knew existed just would not surface. He growled in frustration and clenched his fists. It was a trivial matter, one that he would easily forget were it not for the fact that it plagued him so, goaded him from the recesses of his own mind and remained steadfastly unattainable. He shook his head of the thoughts. It truly mattered not. Both would be killed, and his brief foray into exile would become nothing but an unpleasant memory. Break. Harry Black drifted slowly from his slumber, disturbed by the gentle opening and closing of a door nearby. Immediately his wand was in his hand, and he took in the unfamiliar surroundings, quickly deducing that he had been moved to the main infirmary of the school, whilst he slept, but something was off. He chanced to glance towards the door and around the room and saw nothing amiss, nothing that would suggest he was in any imminent danger, yet the feeling of being watched remained. "You'd better show yourself," he growled as he swept his wand across the expanse of the room. "It's just me," Charlie yelped, his head appearing in the space at the end of his bed. Harry shook his head. "Bloody hell, I almost cursed you," he sighed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you." Charlie replied as he became fully visible and stuffed a silver garment into his robes. "Nice cloak," Harry commented. Charlie flushed slightly as he shrugged. "I used to have a handy map too, but Mum took it off me," he explained with a frown. "The Marauders map?" Charlie nodded excitedly. "I've heard of it. Dad and James used to get up to all sorts with it and under the cloak. I hope you washed it." Charlie grimaced at the implication. "Ugh, please tell me they didn't. Would you put it past them?" Charlie shook his head and scowled. "Thanks, Harry. They're just the thoughts I needed today." Harry chuckled. "What are you doing here?" he questioned. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay," Charlie explained. "I didn't sleep much and thought I'd come see you." "So you snuck in before visiting hours? Would I be right to assume no one knows you are here?" The sheepish look he received in reply answered both questions. "I'm with you," Charlie shrugged. "Nothing will happen." Harry shook his head amusedly. "I'm fine, Charlie," he assured the boy, as he sat up and winced at the pull of the tight burnt skin of his shoulder. "I think it's time for some more that wonderful paste," he grumbled, as he reached for the jar of it on the bedside table. "I'll do it," Charlie offered eagerly, almost snatching the jar from his brother's hand. "There is a matron, it's her job," Harry pointed out. "Well, your brother is here now, so let me do it." Harry mumbled under his breath. "Don't be a baby about it," Charlie sighed as he began applying the ointment to his skin. "I'm not being a baby," Harry huffed petulantly. "Of course not," Charlie cooed. "Now shut up and I'll get you some ice cream if you're a good boy," he mocked. Harry frowned at his younger brother but said nothing. He simply shook his head and allowed the boy to continue his work. Break. Nymphadora Tonks rose from her fitful rest, sleep having not come easy to her for the duration of the night. Every time she closed her eyes, the image of Harry soaring through the air after being hit by the dragon's tail replayed in her mind over again. When she did manage to sleep, her dreams consisted of seeing Harry being engulfed in fire and her being unable to do anything to help him. "Pull yourself together, Tonks," she grumbled to herself as she took in her appearance in the mirror. She always made a point of morphing as soon as she woke. Today's change, however, was nothing short of lackluster. She had aimed for a short, vibrant pink bob, bright blue eyes, and a delicate nose. What she saw, however, was her natural hair length tinged a light pink, dull brown eyes and a rather bulbous nose. She knew that her morphing ability could be affected by her emotions and the fact that the day before and restless night had left her quite traumatized. It was no surprise to her that she was having difficulty. She sighed as she focused her mind on what she wanted to achieve and managed it after few difficult moments, something she only ever had to force when she had been at school. She nodded to her reflection, satisfied with her efforts, and dressed before exiting her room. It was earlier than she thought, judging by the emptiness of the corridors within the castle, but she continued on her way, nonetheless. For her own peace of mind, she needed to see that he was okay. She had no doubt that he was truly, but she had to see it for herself before she could relax. She reached the entrance to the hospital wing and pushed the door open gently, not wanting to disturb any of the patients, only to be greeted by the sight of Harry sat up in his bed and another boy she didn't know caking his burns in a paste. "Are you done yet?" Harry grumbled. "That's it, no ice cream for you," the other boy chastised. "I don't want the bloody ice cream, that stuff is cold enough," Harry griped. Tonks snorted at the pair and entered the room as they turned to face her. "Watcha, Harry, you wouldn't happen to be misbehaving, would you?" she questioned with a raised eyebrow, already feeling better in herself. "I'm not misbehaving, he's taking forever." "I'd rather let the healer have at me," Harry complained. "I doubt even Pomfrey would put up with you," Charlie muttered. "Are you not going to introduce me?" Tonks questioned, nodding towards the boy. Harry grinned evilly. "Of course. Where are my manners? This is my little brother, Charlie." "Charlie, this is Nymphadora," he explained as he hit the unsuspecting girl with a silencing charm. "Nice to meet you, Nymphadora," Charlie offered in greeting as he continued rubbing the salve into Harry's shoulder, not noticing the look of fury that had formed on the woman's face. Tonks attempted to correct the boy but found she could not speak. so turned her glare towards Harry before firing a stinging hex at the younger boy and undoing the spell of the elder. Charlie yelped and looked towards the red-faced woman in shock. "My name is Tonks, don't you forget it, little Potter," she warned. Harry laughed heartily as Charlie rubbed his arm. "She does that if you use her name." "Then why didn't she do it to you?" Charlie whined. "Because I'm better than her," Harry replied with a wink. Tonks growled. "I came here to check you were okay. I wish I didn't bother now," she huffed as she turned and began walking towards the exit. "Tonks, I'm sorry," Harry called. "You wouldn't leave me here alone in pain, would you?" The woman turned and narrowed her eyes at him and shook her head at his fake pleading look. "One more out of you and you'll be in here longer," she threatened. Harry held his hands up innocently. "I will be on my best behavior," he promised solemnly. Tonks sighed as she took a seat next to the bed. "How are you?" she asked worriedly. "I'm fine," he assured her with a smile. "I guess it will take more than a dragon to finish me off." Her eyes narrowed at him again. "I think she's more than enough," Charlie broke in as he nodded towards the unamused woman. "You might be right," Harry agreed. "Honestly, I am fine," he added. "Good," Tonks breathed, annoyed but relieved that he was back to himself despite his gift at frustrating her. "Do you know when you are getting out?" "As soon as the healer gets here, I'm off," Harry vowed. "I think I might have a look around the village, if you can find the time to come." "Being a busy or Tonks scowled at him. "Well, being a busy rookie doesn't pay much, so if you buy me lunch I might consider it," she offered casually. Harry nodded. "Sorry, little brother, no leaving the school grounds for you today. I won't be blamed for leading you astray." Charlie shrugged and smirked as he stood and removed his cloak from his pocket. Draping it over his shoulders, he looked between the two and gave them a waggle of his eyebrows. "I wouldn't want to impose on your date anyway, even I'm not that sad," he quipped before disappearing under the cloak and laughing as he sprinted towards the doors to the infirmary. "It's not a date," Harry shouted as he fired a stinging hex after him. "Cheeky git," he added as the doors opened and his spell splashed harmlessly against the wall. "I wonder where he gets that from?" Tonks asked sarcastically. "James," Harry answered immediately. "You too," Tonks replied. Harry sobered immediately and Tonks chided herself for making the comparison. "I'm sorry," she offered. "I didn't think before I spoke." Harry waved her off. "Don't worry about it." She took one of his hands in her own and shook her head. "No, it's something that bothers you, so I will worry about it." Harry gave her a weak smile. "It's just hard to think of them as my parents. They gave me away like I meant nothing, and it was Sirius, my father, that raised me." "Does this have something to do with why you hate Dumbledore?" Tonks probed. Harry nodded. "He messed with everyone's memories. James's, Sirius and Lily's. Even mine. He's the one that left me with the Muggles and made Sirius forget about me. He tricked James and Lily into thinking that they were visiting me at Petunia's, but Aunt Cassie and Dad rescued me when I was 4. "Bastard," Tonks hissed. "The Muggles were that bad?" Harry deflated. "I kind of spoke to you about them before. They were nice to everyone else, but they despised me. I lived in a cupboard under the stairs and would be dead now if they didn't come when they did," he explained, his vulnerability showing through. "And Dumbledore knew about this?" she questioned angrily. "He did," Harry confirmed. "He even tried to find me to take me back there. If it wasn't for Lord Black, he probably would have managed it." Tonks' hair began to cycle through numerous colors until Harry gave her hand a squeeze. "It's fine, Tonks. It happened a long time ago. I've got Dad and the others. That's all I need." "It's not fine, Harry," Tonks hissed. Harry chuckled. "Why don't you get the healer so I can finally get out of here? I might even get you a dessert if you're lucky." Tonks sighed. "I think I need more than a dessert," she muttered as she headed towards the office at the far side of the ward to rouse Madame Pomfrey. Before she could even knock, the matron exited the room and headed towards the bed to check on Harry. With a shrug, the metamorph followed the woman, laughing at Harry's expression as she began to fuss over him. "I take it back," he groaned. "Get my brother back in here. I prefer his bedside manner." "Oh, do be quiet, Mr. Black," Madame Pomfrey scolded lightly. "You're upsetting the other people in here." "I'm the only patient here," he pointed out irritably. I was referring to myself and Miss Tonks, the healer returned. Harry pouted and shot the giggling Tonks a glare. I'm not getting you dessert now, he grumbled. Oh, poor Harry, Tonks mocked. Can he not handle a little TLC? TLC? Just fire a few bone breakers at me and be done with it. Tonks shook her head. Madame Pomfrey is a very good healer, Harry. You yourself would know, Miss Tonks. Several times I had to patch you up after one of your misadventures, the woman reminded her. Tonks flushed a bright pink but was saved from any further embarrassment by the arrival of Sirius and Arcturus Black. How's he doing, Madame Pomfrey? The younger of the two questioned. Considering he has spent the past 5 minutes whining like a child, I would say he is recovering remarkably well. Once you're dressed, you can leave, Mr. Black, she finished, sweet smile. Thank Merlin, Harry sighed. Thank you, madam. Your efforts to injure me further are much appreciated. Madame Pomfrey shook her head and walked back towards her office. I never thought you'd be such a wimp being healed, Tonks snorted. Harry hates healers, Sirius broke in with a grin. He hates relying on anyone for anything, but he is useless at medical spells, he explained. I'm better than I used to be, Harry defended. The last time you tried to bandage one of Leo's wounds, it wrapped itself around his neck instead of his arm. You nearly killed him, Arcturus interjected. Harry shook his head and lifted his duvet before pulling it back down and blushing. Who took my clothes off? He questioned, his eyes wide. Sirius scratched his chin. Well, since Tonks wasn't here to help with it, we let a few of the 7th-year girls interested in healing do it. A few of the boys, too, Sirius answered. What? Harry yelped as Tonks aimed a kick at the man, almost tripping over in the process. I'm joking, Sirius placated as he guffawed. I did. I also took your egg to our rooms. Harry released a deep breath and nodded. Now get out so I can change, he commanded. Are you sure you don't need help? We don't want you making your injuries worse. I'm sure, Tonks. That was as far as he got before the furious woman drew her wand and chased him from the room. She certainly got her mother's temper, Arcturus commented as he followed the pair from the room, leaving Harry to get dressed. I need to shower, he muttered as he caught the lingering smell of burnt flesh and sweat that clung to him from the previous day's activities. After carefully pulling his clothes on, he exited the hospital wing to clean himself up properly, hoping that he would not find himself back in here any time soon. Break. Having made his escape unscathed from the hospital wing, Charlie made his way back towards Gryffindor Tower to meet Ron and Hermione before they would go to the Great Hall for breakfast. Fortune favors the bold, he said to the fat lady who opened up to admit him, but not without a suspicious glance at the boy. He entered the common room to find it mostly empty. It was Saturday after all, and most of the house would be enjoying the rare chance of a lay-in. Fred, George, he greeted the twins who were huddled in one of the corners. The boys hastily packed away what they were working on and shoved it into a bag, poorly concealing the fact that they were, as usual, up to something. Little Charlikins, one of them replied. The Potter of all Potters, the other followed up. Not sneaking about, are we? The first accused. No, Charlie denied. I was just visiting my brother. A fine show he gave us, Fred, he believed, praised. A most resplendent display, George agreed. Charlie shook his head in frustration. He should have known better than to approach them. Ron and Hermione still asleep? He questioned. The two laughed heartily. Little Ronikins could sleep for England, Fred responded. A lazy sod, that one, George added in a tone of disappointment. The bookish beauty, however, left just before you arrived, Fred continued. Be in her bonnet and all. Didn't even take the time to make slanderous claims against us, George sighed. I'd better catch her up, Charlie muttered. Farewell, Charlikins. Give her a kiss from us. Without responding, Charlie left the two to continue with their mischief. The less he knew about what they were up to, the better. He left the 7th-floor corridor, his eyes darting to every nook and cranny that he could be attacked from. He couldn't trust some of the Slytherins to not be waiting for the opportunity to attack him. It had happened before. He was startled as he turned a corner and came face to face with Harry's friend, jumping at how uncomfortably close he appeared in front of him as he rounded the corner. Easy there, fella, Leo said calmly. He looked around the corridor and frowned. Shouldn't you have people with you? Charlie sighed. Ron is still in bed and Hermione already left. I'm only going to the Great Hall, he explained. Leo shook his head. Harry told me that you shouldn't be alone. It's not safe. Now more than ever. Come on, I'll go with you. I've not been in the hall yet, he offered. Charlie nodded and relaxed with his escort. He hadn't spoken to the boy much, but had no doubt he could trust him. You're up early for a Saturday, he commented. I've not been to bed yet, Leo chuckled. Cassiopeia is a taskmaster. I was going to get some breakfast and see Harry before I get some sleep. He'll probably be gone by the time you've eaten, Charlie replied. I saw him earlier and that Tonks girl is with him, he added with a frown and rubbed his arm where she had hexed him. You didn't call her by her first name, did you? Charlie nodded and the boy laughed. Yeah, she got me too. She's a fiery lass. Harry is taking her on a date, I think, Charlie revealed. Is he? Leo returned in surprise. A first for everything, I suppose. Doesn't Harry date? Charlie asked interestedly. Not that I know of, Leo answered. He's more interested in practicing magic or his fighting. Fighting? Aye, you don't want to get on the right side of him with or without a wand in his hand. Nasty bastard, your brother. Would you fight him? Charlie asked as he took a seat at the Gryffindor table. Leo pulled his gaze away from the enchanted ceiling and shook his head. I can handle myself well enough, and we train together when we can. I can hold out against him for a while, but he is something else. As quick as anything and just as ruthless as Lord Black, Leo answered honestly. I've no shame in admitting that I wouldn't stand a chance against him. Are you talking about your brother? A female voice broke in. Yeah, Charlie confirmed. This is Alicia. She's on the Quidditch team, he introduced the girl. And this is Leo. He is Harry's friend. Nice to meet you, lass, Leo greeted her with a smile. And you, she replied warmly. Is your brother okay? Charlie nodded. He'll be out today if he ever stops complaining, he mumbled. Leo laughed. Aye, he's wingy one when he's hurt. Who are your friends? He asked, noticing two other girls sat with her, listening to their conversation. Oh, this is Angelina and Katie, Alicia introduced. They are on the Quidditch team too, with Fred and George. We don't have a keeper at the moment, and we need a new seeker. Danvers is useless. You don't mean them to ginger chappies? Leo questioned with a frown. What have they done now? Angelina huffed. Nothing yet, but I'm watching them. Trouble written all over them, Leo replied. You don't know the half of it, Charlie chuckled. Angelina and Alicia are dating them. Leo shook his head. How have you not killed them? We've both been close a few times, but they are really sweet when you get to know them. It's just surviving the first few years. Alicia explained. What about you, Katie interjected. Do you have a lady waiting for you at home? No, I've been at all boys' schools since I was 9. I only just graduated, he answered with a shrug. In all boys' school? Katie questioned. Aye, one in Japan and one in Russia. It's military school and they don't admit girls. They have girls' ones, but they keep us separate. We can't be trusted even with our vows, he added in disbelief. Vows? Charlie asked. Aye, vows of celibacy whilst we are in service to the school. Vows to aid the school should we be called upon until we are 25, and a vow to the ICW should they need to mobilize a force until we are 40, he reeled off. What kind of school does that? Katie queried, horrified. Only the best, Leo replied with a wink. 7 tough years, but worth every second, and now I'm free unless I'm needed. What will you do now? Angelina questioned. Leo shrugged. I'm doing my apprenticeship with Aunt Cassie, and then maybe I'll be a hit wizard or an auror, or maybe get into private security. I'm not decided yet. Will you do that in Ireland? Katie asked. No, there's nothing there for me. I'll probably head back to Russia eventually, he replied guardedly. Anyway, I'm going to get some sleep. Can one of you lassies make sure he gets back all right? I will, Alicia offered. Thanks, it was nice meeting you all, he offered, and left abruptly. Did I say something wrong? Katie questioned with a frown. He was born in Ireland, but he's an orphan, Charlie replied. Hermione said he had a bad time there and has been with Harry since they were young. Oh, I feel bad for mentioning it now, Katie said. You didn't know, Alicia comforted her. I'll apologize when I see him next time, the youngest chaser vowed. Break. Having showered and dressed in some jeans, trainers, a jumper and a charcoal winter coat, Harry had barely wrapped a scarf around his neck before he had been dragged out of the castle by an excitable Tonks, who in the time he had been away had somehow planned out their entire day. With an amused smile at the girl, he followed her lead as they exited the grounds and made their way towards Hogsmeade. We have to go to Honeyduke's first, and then Zunkos. Oh, and then the Shrieking Shack, she insisted. As he entered the quaint village, it was clear to see why the wizarding populace held it in such high esteem. In itself, it was beautiful, tranquil in its own unique way, and the surrounding mountains and scenery only added to this notion. Harry had visited many magical dwellings, but there was something genuine about Hogsmeade that he found appealing. It was honest and without the usual exaggerated flair that most iconic locations projected. His observations of the place lasted but a few moments before he was unceremoniously shoved into one of the shops, his nose instantly filling with an array of sweet smells. Tonks handed him a basket and proceeded to guide him around the shop, taking it upon herself to fill it both with what she liked and what she thought he would enjoy, commenting briefly on each of the treats before moving on to the next display. Harry, having never experienced such a fevered approach to shopping, did his best to take it in his stride, but quickly realized that it was better to just let the metamorph do as she pleased and for him to keep us as best he could. Not that he had anything to complain about. The woman was positively entertaining to watch, her hair and features shifting as she went about the task of providing enough sweets that would more than likely be able to feed half of the school they had left behind. That will be 26 galleons and 6 sickles, the cashier announced as she finished adding up their total, a lot of gold to spend on sweets. Harry simply grinned as he produced his Gringotts card. You have to let me pay for half, Tonks insisted. Harry shook his head. I invited you here, so I will pay, he countered firmly. Besides, it was worth it just to watch Hurricane Tonks sweep through here. The words were sincere. Harry rarely took time to relax, and Tonks's attitude was quite infectious. It warmed him to see her so carefree as she perused the shelves. Tonks flushed as she jutted her chin forward defiantly. I like a lot of things in here, she defended. Harry simply grinned and pulled her out of the shop before she spotted anything else that took her fancy. Remembering that he was not familiar with the village, he followed Tonks once more, and the pair emerged from Zonko's, almost an hour later, weighed down with even more purchases, where the woman proceeded to drag him towards what could only be described as a dilapidated building on the outskirts. The most haunted house in Britain, Tonks declared proudly. Harry chuckled and shook his head. It's not haunted. Yes, it is, Tonks argued. The villagers and the press have all heard the screams coming from here. They were the screams of Remus Lupin. He used to come here to transform on the full moons. Tonks gaped at him before swatting him on the shoulder. You're such a spoil-sport, Harry, she grumbled. For that I will be having 2 desserts, she demanded haughtily as she turned and walked back towards the village. You wouldn't be sulking, would you, Tonks? He mocked as he caught up with her. He received an unamused look in response before she entered the 3 broomsticks and found the pair a table towards the back of the pub. Harry took a seat and simply stared at her. What can I do to make it up to you, he sighed. Tonks smiled demurely at him as she leaned forward. The caramel bubbles. I want all of them. Harry narrowed his eyes at her. You only want them because you know they're my favorite. Tonks nodded. They're my favorite too, and since you ruined the mystery of the Shrieking Shack for me, I think I need all of them to get over the upset. Fine, Harry agreed, but the chocolate frogs are mine. Tonks shrugged. I don't like them anyway, she replied with a dismissive wave. Before the back and forth could continue between them, they were interrupted by the arrival of the server. Hello, Mr. Black, what can I get you? She questioned nervously. Harry frowned as he looked towards the hesitant girl. He'd been stared at for most of the day but had simply ignored it along with the pointing and whispering. Instead of making anything of it, he gave her a warm smile. I'd like a medium rare sirloin and salad, please, he requested, and a butterbeer. Of course. The girl complied as she noted down his order. "And for you, my lady." Tonks was taken aback by the address, and she sputtered as Harry attempted to conceal his mirth. "I'm no lady," she corrected hotly, "but I'll take the same as this idiot," she added, as she shot Harry a glare. The server looked at Tonks wide-eyed before making a hasty retreat from the two. "It's not funny," Tonks growled. "It is," Harry retorted. "I just wish they would all stop staring." Tonks glanced around the room and immediately became conscious of the fact that the two of them were indeed being unashamedly observed by the other patrons. "Well, you did kill a dragon. I don't know how many people alive could manage it, let alone be walking around the next day." Harry shook his head. "Everyone will remember that and the fact that you are going to be the head of a very influential family one day," she explained. "At least none of them will try to mess with you." Harry exhaled deeply. "It's not as though I will be here," he replied. "I'll find a suitable proxy to act in my stead." "Oh, I forgot you're going to be leaving," she muttered. Remembering such a thing did not sit well with the woman. She liked spending time with Harry. She felt as though she could be herself. She felt comfortable when he was around. "Yeah, but you can always come and visit whenever you like," he offered with a smile. "There's lots of places that I can show you." Tonks shook her head. "I don't think Lord Black would allow it." Harry took her hand from across the table and gave it a gentle squeeze. "You will be there as my guest, and trust me, if he had a problem with you being around, he wouldn't allow it here, let alone back home." "I guess we will just have to see what happens," Tonks replied with a shrug. "You never know, you might get sick of the sight of me before the end of this year," she added with a smirk. Harry snorted lightly. "I doubt that," he denied. "I'm getting used to seeing you every day." "It's not every day," Tonks bit back. "Yes, it is," Harry corrected. "Ever since you woke me up in the middle of the night, you've been there every day." "Oh," Tonks muttered. When she thought back on the past few weeks, she realized that he was right. She had visited him every day once her shift had finished. "I can always stop coming," she offered with a forced grin. Harry shook his head. "You're welcome any time," he offered sincerely. "I quite like having you there. It makes me forget that I hate this place and that I'm stuck in this stupid tournament," he explained with a thoughtful frown. "I should be thanking you, really." "What for?" Tonks asked. "For just being here, for making this place bearable, fun even." Tonks smiled at him. "Looks like I'll have to stick around for a while. We can't have you getting all depressed on us now, can we?" she returned with a wink. "I'd like that," Harry replied with another smile. The two enjoyed their meal and even stayed on for a few more butterbeers before they decided to call it a day. The sun had already set as they exited the pub and began making their way back towards the school, so they opted to head straight towards the third floor and to the quarters that Harry shared with the rest of his entourage. After being greeted by the flamboyant Sir Cadogan, they entered the room to find Sirius, Arcturus, Leo and Cassie gathered around the table, his golden egg placed in the center. "Is something wrong?" Harry questioned. "No, nothing like that. We were just discussing what the second task could possibly be," Sirius explained. "Sorry, I should have come back earlier," Harry apologized. Sirius waved him off. "You earned a day off, Harry. How did you find Hogsmeade?" he questioned as he nodded towards the bags that each carried. "I like it. There's a lot there, and I only spent just under 30 galleons on sweets," he added with a veiled gesture towards Tonks. Sirius barked out a short laugh. "Oh, your first shopping trip with a woman. You'd best take a firm stance, or you'll be employed as a personal bag carrier and dress up doll for the rest of your life," he advised with a suggestive wiggle of his eyebrows. "I carry my own bags, thank you very much," Tonks retorted. "For now," Sirius commented. "Shut up, Sirius," Arcturus broke in. "Come, Harry, let's open this up and see what the clue is. We don't know how long it will take to work out." Harry nodded and placed his bags on one of the sofas before approaching and retrieving the egg. The pattern on it was intricate but not compiled of runes or any other familiar scrawl. He noticed the hinged top and pulled it open. Immediately he dropped it and covered his ears as it wailed, the others in the room mimicking his reaction. "For the love of Merlin, shut it," Sirius yelled over the screeching. Harry kicked the egg closed and glared at it. Bloody hell, it sounds just like my mother when she went off on one, Sirius groaned. Warburger was worse, Cassiopeia deadpanned. What was that? Tonks questioned as she rubbed her ears. It can't be a banshee, we'd all be deaf if it was. Leo sighed. No, but it has to be a language of some kind, Harry speculated. Arcturus nodded his agreement. Maybe try a translation spell. I doubt it will be that simple, though, he suggested. I'll have to think about it, Harry decided. Take it somewhere quiet and see if I can work it out. A good idea, you should prioritize it, Arcturus advised. Harry nodded. They also announced the ball today, Sirius added. Something else for you to think about. Harry groaned. Can I not just skip it? Arcturus shook his head. You need to be well versed in events like this. You will receive many invites to them as the Lord Black, and you can't snub all of them, Harry, he explained. Fine, I'll go, he conceded irritably. You'd best find a suitable partner. You will have to open the ball with a dance after all, Sirius informed him with a smirk. Great, Harry replied sarcastically. Best make it quick, Sirius urged. You don't want to be left without much choice of a date. He's a champion. He could probably take anyone he wanted, Leo mused aloud. Then you'd best get yourself one too. If I have to go, then so do you. Harry returned with a grin. Leo shook his head in horror and looked at Cassie for support. The woman simply shook her head and raised one of her delicate brows at him. Speaking of going, Tonks broke in. I'd better be off. See you later, Harry. She bid him farewell and exited the room before he could reply. I'll get on with it tomorrow, Harry sighed and grumbled under his breath, incoherently as he rubbed his eyes tiredly. But for now I'm going to get an early night, he announced as he headed towards his bedroom. Bloody dragons and now this, he huffed, as he settled down to work on his occlumency. Break. Nymphadora Tonks entered her own room, an unpleasant feeling having settled in her stomach since leaving the Black Quarters. She had enjoyed her day with Harry and nothing had overtly happened that would leave her feeling such a way. It confused her, and the only thing she was certain was that she couldn't be around him at the moment, but she didn't want to be alone either. She wanted something to distract her from the foreign negativity that was irking her so. Seeing that it was still only early, she showered and left the castle to clear her head, still no closer to figuring out what was bothering her. She left the castle grounds and paused as she looked towards the village ahead, her stomach tightening uncomfortably at the thought of going there. She shook her head and apparated away, her frustration mounting, wanting nothing more than this feeling to abate. She arrived outside the home of her parents and breathed a sigh of relief at the sight of streets she had spent her childhood. She hadn't visited her parents since the start of her tenure at the school, and approached the front door, feeling easier now that she was away from Hogwarts, but now guilty instead. She usually made a point to visit at least once a week, something she had neglected in favor of her duties and spending time with Harry. Dora, her mother greeted her with a smile as she pulled her into a hug. Are you okay? She questioned as she noticed the forlorn look that adorned her daughter. Yes, I'm fine, Tonks snapped. I don't know, she finished with a huff. Andromeda smiled at her as she pulled her inside. How about I make us some tea? Tonks nodded as she followed the woman, wishing that she hadn't come. She didn't even know why she did. She wanted only to escape the castle for a while. Ted? Andromeda called as they entered the kitchen. Dora's here, she announced as she busied herself with filling the kettle and fetching some cups. A moment later, Ted Tonks entered the room and immediately pulled Nymphadora into a tight hug. Are you okay, sweetie? He questioned with a frown of concern. I'm fine, Dad, she sighed. Ted chuckled and shook his head. You can't lie to your father, Dora. I raised you and can see that something is bothering you. Tonks gave the man a half-hearted smile as he took a seat at the table opposite her. I'm okay, she tried to assure the man. Something is bothering you, Andromeda interjected as she filled their cups and added milk and sugar to her daughters. Unless you chose to wear your hair like that. Tonks frowned and checked her reflection, the back of her spoon. Her hair was once again hanging limply, a dull brown in color with pale pink streaks throughout. Her eyes had become almost black and she sighed, defeatedly, not understanding why this was happening. I just wanted to get away from the castle for a while, she muttered. And how is it going there? Andromeda questioned. It's better than I thought, Tonks replied with a shrug. It's nice seeing Sirius again. He did say he would write to you. Andromeda nodded. I got his letter, but if he thinks that I will forgive him so easily, he's got another thing coming. He can stew for a while before I even consider writing back, she declared. Ted simply grinned and hid his mirth by taking a sip of his tea. His wife was a stubborn woman and not one any would wish to be on the wrong side of. Have you met my grandfather yet? Andromeda asked casually, though her tone was clipped. Ted's mirth vanished entirely, his jaw setting firmly. He had no need for reconciliation with the man, but would be very unhappy were his daughter to be treated with scorn for his and Andy's perceived slight against her bigoted family. I haven't spoken to him much, but he's been okay, Tonks replied. He's not stopped me from being there, she added. Andromeda nodded. What about Aunt Cassie? I don't see her much at all. She's got an apprentice and they're always busy. I see Harry more than any of the rest, she shrugged. The Potter boy? Andromeda questioned with a deep frown. We saw the paper. Quite the feat for anyone, let alone a 16-year-old. He's not a Potter, Tonks retorted hotly, her hair flashing a deep red. Ted and Andromeda shared a look of surprise at the outburst, and the latter held up a placating hand. Sorry, Tonks mumbled, but they have no right to be called his parents. He's a black. So, what's he like? Andromeda asked as she sipped her drink. Nymphadora smiled. He's fun. Really smart and a prodigy with magic. I doubt even Mad Eye could beat him. I spent the day with him in Hogsmeade. He'd never been before, she defended as her mother rose an eyebrow in her direction. And quite the looker, Andromeda added with a smirk, causing her husband to sputter and Tonks to blush uncontrollably. Mum, she whined. I am here, Ted pointed out. Oh, Ted, she cooed. He's far too young for you to worry about. I was just pointing out a fact. He's a very desirable catch, even without the looks. I imagine he has a lot of witches clamoring after him, she finished as she glanced towards her red-faced daughter. Ted followed suit and shook his head in despair, catching on to his wife's game immediately. Nymphadora ground her teeth at the topic of conversation. She did not want to think about Harry right now, especially in such a context. He's good-looking. So what? She returned evenly, the knot she had felt in her stomach returning tighter than before. I was just saying, Andromeda replied innocently. Did you enjoy your day in the village? Tonks nodded. It was nice. We went to Honeyduke's, Zonko's, and had dinner in the Three Broomsticks, she explained. He said he liked it there, she added with a small smile. So, you went on a date with him? Andromeda pressed. It was not a date, Tonks denied vehemently. It sounds like it was, dear. Ted gave his input. That's what we used to do at school, he added, gesturing between himself and his wife. The younger of the three growled before sinking further into her seat. It wasn't a date, she reiterated. Andromeda gave her a smile. Did you enjoy the day with him? She pried. Tonks gave her a glare but nodded. Yes, she sighed, but it wasn't any different to any other time I spend with him, she added hurriedly. How much time do you spend with him? Ted broke in. I see him every day, she replied with a slight frown. I didn't even really think about it until he pointed it out today. Ted nodded. It's just natural spending time with him, he stated. Tonks' frown deepened, but she nodded nonetheless. And nothing happened today to upset you? Andromeda questioned. Nymphadora shook her head firmly. No, she said firmly. It was as it always is. We spent the day in Hogsmeade and went back to his rooms, and he opened his egg, the clue for the next task, she explained irritably. Anything else? Andromeda pressed. Tonks shook her head. Only that they announced the Yule Ball. That Harry will have to find a date for, Andromeda pointed out. He doesn't even want to go, but Sirius said he has to because he has to open it with a dance, Tonks huffed. Andromeda gave her daughter a sympathetic smile. Could that be what is bothering you? Why would it? She growled. It's just something he has to do. With a girl on his arm, Andromeda reminded her. It bothers you. It does not, Tonks hissed angrily. her hair cycling through a multitude of colors. "Of course, sweetie." Andromeda sighed, though she couldn't hide her smile. She had never seen her daughter outwardly jealous like this. She knew that she didn't date because of what happened at school, which had been a worry for the woman over the years. She had spent many nights comforting the girl after, and it took all her willpower to not curse the boy that had upset her. "And what is that supposed to mean?" Tonks growled. "Nothing at all, Dora," her mother replied. "But look at it in another way. How would it make you feel if you saw Harry with another woman the same way he spends time with you?" Tonks grimaced and swallowed deeply, as the knot in her stomach tightened uncomfortably. "Do you not think that you might like him just a little?" Andromeda pushed. "Yes," her mind answered immediately, but she shook her head. Yes, she liked spending time with him. He was easy to be around, teased her as much as she did him, and it never felt strange or wrong when she was in his presence. But that was it. There was nothing else to it. He was attractive and treated her with respect, but she didn't think of him that way. She didn't think of anyone that way. She couldn't allow herself to since school. "It's not like that," she denied as she stood. "He is just a friend," she said firmly before taking her leave. "She's scared," Andromeda sighed. "The girl has no self-esteem." Ted nodded his agreement. The suspicions of how their daughter felt only increased when the Daily Prophet arrived the next morning. On the front cover was a picture of Harry and Nymphadora, the former holding the hand of the girl across one of the tables in the 3 broomsticks, each sporting a comfortable look of admiration as they gazed at each other. The article, of course, speculated on the potential romance between the two, and commented on how cozy they were in the company of the other. The accompanying photo did nothing to dispute this. If anything, it added credence to the claims. "They are either both clueless or that is a very good fabrication," Ted stated, as he pointed to the picture. "You know as well as I do that is no fabrication," Andromeda sighed. "If it is, then the Prophet can expect retribution. Grandfather does not take slander lightly." "Break!" Sirius Black cursed under his breath, as he rubbed his eyes tiredly. Harry was not going to take the article well, even in the face of the damning evidence. Not only that, he would have to explain himself to his grandfather. Arcturus despised the press, but the report did not contain anything other than speculation, and little could be done about such a thing, particularly with the nature of the picture that only supported the comments of the writer. The two of them certainly hadn't helped matters with how close they appeared, something that Sirius chastised himself for not noticing. Tonks had spent a lot of time within their rooms since they had arrived, but he had thought nothing of it until he had seen the photo, and then the realization had set in. Initially she had come to visit him, but this had quickly turned into her coming to spend time with Harry. He had not even considered that anything could develop between the two. Harry had never expressed any interest in dating. The picture, however, caused Sirius to have doubts. The door to the quarters opened, admitting the head of the family, clutching his own copy of the paper, his lips in a tight line. "What do you make of this?" Arcturus growled as he slammed it on the table. Sirius sighed. "I don't know," he mumbled as he rubbed at his eyes once more. "I don't know a thing," he added, seeing the look of disbelief from the older man. Arcturus shook his head as he took a seat. "What are we going to do about it?" he questioned. "What can we do?" Sirius countered. "If there is anything in that," he said, pointing to the article, "then there is nothing we can do. Harry is stubborn, and if it is true, are you going to stop them?" Arcturus banged his fist on the table. "The girl is a disgrace to this family," he spat. "And if you voice your opinion to Harry, what do you think will happen?" Sirius returned. Arcturus shook his head. "He won't listen to me. He's not the same little boy who used to tremble when I walked into a room. He's almost a man," Sirius pointed out. "He has to make his own decisions. You're the one that has drilled it into him." "I know," Arcturus conceded, "but he is my heir. He will do as I instruct." Sirius snorted. "He loves and respects you, but if you push him in a direction he doesn't want to go, he will turn his back on you." Sirius said knowingly, "So, we just let them carry on with this?" Sirius nodded. "He's been so much more relaxed since she has been around. It's the happiest I've seen him, even though we are here. You said yourself you would have made a match between him and a daughter of Narcissa or Bellatrix if they had one. Why not aunties? You can't deny that she has black blood." Arcturus flared his nostrils at his grandson. He had entertained the idea of such matches were they to be a possibility. Harry was no doubt a black, but his parentage gave him cause for concern. He wanted more black blood in the next generation, and with Bella in Azkaban and Narcissa only providing a fool for a son, he had long given up on the idea. "I don't like it," he sighed, "but for once you might be right. The girl is just like her mother." "Then let us just leave them," Sirius implored. "There may be nothing to it anyway," he added doubtfully. Arcturus snorted as he pointed at the picture. "Does that look like nothing, Sirius?" The younger man shook his head. "It looks like two people who care a lot for each other," he admitted. "But I think we should still speak to Harry and see what he has to say." Arcturus nodded his agreement. "Where is the boy?" he questioned. "Running," Sirius replied, rolling his eyes. "Where else would he be at this time?" Break. Having finished his morning workout, Harry pulled himself from the lake and applied drying and warming charms to himself as he made his way back towards the castle. He hadn't had a swim for some time, and the lake proved to be interesting enough to garner his attention. He had seen more creatures in the depths than he imagined possible, and even had to fend off an attack from a swarm of Grindylows that had attempted to drag him to the murky bottom. That notwithstanding, he thoroughly enjoyed the experience. As usual, the corridors of the castle were devoid of any activity as he made his way back to the third floor and entered the black common room to be greeted by a severe head of house and father. "What's wrong?" he questioned. "Take a seat, Harry," Arcturus instructed. With a frown, Harry did as he was bid and took a seat opposite the two men, his grandfather sliding a copy of the morning paper to him immediately. His frown deepened as he absorbed the cover, his eyes drawn straight to the photo on the page. "Can you explain this?" Sirius questioned. "There's nothing to explain. We were just eating lunch," Harry replied defensively. "Look at the photo, Harry. Really look at it and tell me what you see," his grandfather urged. Harry shook his head but looked. There was himself and Tonks in the three broomsticks at their table, with him holding her hand and leaning towards. Even to his inexperienced eye, there looked to be more intimacy to it than he remembered. "It wasn't like that," he denied forcefully. "Then why don't you tell us how it is?" Arcturus offered. "Is this picture not real?" Harry sighed as he dragged a hand through his hair. "She was upset because I told her I'd be leaving at the end of the year," he explained. "I just said that it would be fine for her to visit if she wants to." "That's all there is to it?" Arcturus questioned sternly, "because to me it looks a whole lot more. To everyone else, it will come across the same." "For Merlin's sake," Harry growled as he shot to his feet. "It's not like that. I like spending time with her, but that is it. We are just friends." Arcturus held up a hand to calm him. "It matters not to me, Harry," he assured the boy, "and quite frankly it is not the business of anyone besides yourself and Nymphadora, but you have to be careful, more so than anyone else. You will one day be the head of this family, and such displays will not endear you to potential allies." "I don't care what anyone else has to say or what they think," Harry seethed, his eyes flashing dangerously. "I will spend my time with whomever I wish and in whatever context. This," he declared as he snatched up the offending article, "is just two friends eating dinner together. Ask her and she will tell you the same," he finished with a glare. Arcturus nodded calmly. "It may not matter to you, Harry, but what about Nymphadora? How do you think this is going to make her feel?" he questioned as he pointed to the newspaper. Harry exhaled a deep breath as he took his seat once more. "I don't know," he muttered. "I'll speak to her when I see her," he promised. The two men nodded their agreement. "Have you thought of any prospective dates for the ball?" Sirius asked with a smirk, receiving a glare in response. "I think I have other things to worry about first, don't you?" he bit back irritably. Sirius shook his head. Harry in his naivety could not see what was right in front of him, but he could, and he was certain that his grandfather could see it also. It, however, was not his place to pry any further than he had. If Harry chose to remain ignorant of what he believed to be true, then that was his decision to make. Break. For 2 days since the article had been published, he hadn't seen her. She hadn't come to him as she usually did when she finished work, nor had he seen her on his travels through the castle, something with the impending Yule Ball approaching he was loath to do often. It seemed that even despite the Prophet article, many girls were vying for his favor as a date. Whenever he had left his rooms, it didn't take long for the pointing and whispering to ensue. At first he believed that it was because of the article, but had overheard a few hushed conversations of a different topic entirely, namely his being the prime target as an escort to the ball. Most had kept their distance from him, whether that was due to nervousness or fear he couldn't be sure. Others were much bolder in their pursuits. He had already turned down offers from 2 girls from Beauxbaton and 3 from Hogwarts, though it achieved nothing in deterring the talking nor hungry looks he received. To avoid this, he decided to remain in his room for the most part. He neither had the inclination nor the mindset to be polite any longer. The truth was, he missed Tonks. She would know what to do to handle this, and he just missed her being around. Sirius had taken it upon himself to inquire as to his progress in securing a date at every possible moment, and had not been happy when Harry told him that he had declined several offers to date. The girls hadn't been unattractive, on the contrary, they had all been very comely in their own way, particularly the 7th-year Slytherin that had asked, but he didn't know any of them. He'd never dated before and knew he was out of his depth when it came to the opposite sex. This was more Sirius' forte, and he had no desire to discuss it with the man. He was being annoying as things were, and Harry had no desire to press the issue. Leo was just as inexperienced. He himself was, and Cassie would simply tell him to find the best match politically. He was not going to take a girl to his first ball just because she could be a beneficial contact later. He shook his head as he exited his room, already expecting to not find Tonks there. Still, the disappointment at finding Sirius at the table made itself known. "You do know that you can go and find her," Sirius commented over a book he was reading. "Who?" Harry replied grumpily. "Tonks." Sirius sighed. "If she won't come here, then go to her." Harry shook his head as he took a seat opposite the man. "She's probably just busy," he dismissed. Sirius closed the book and looked at his son in exasperation. "Or upset about the article," he shrugged. Harry simply narrowed his eyes at the man. "You know, I never thought you were a coward," Sirius said offhandedly as he picked up the tome and continued perusing it. "What is that supposed to mean?" Harry returned heatedly. "You're too scared to see her," he accused. "Instead, you've spent the past 2 days moping around here like someone has taken your favorite toy." "She is not a toy," Harry hissed, "and I am not a coward." Sirius shrugged. "It's not me you have to prove it to," he replied as put the book down once more and looked imploringly at the teen. "Go and see her, Harry. The worst she can do is slam the door in your face and tell you to piss off." "She doesn't want to see me, Dad," Harry huffed. "Or maybe she thinks that you don't want to see her," Sirius pointed out. "Sometimes, Harry, you just have to stop thinking so much and just do something. Sitting here isn't making you feel better, but I bet my life that seeing her will—" "We are just friends," Harry mumbled. "Then go and see your friend," Sirius advised. "If that's all she is, then you should have no problem in straightening all this out." Harry shook his head. "I don't know where her rooms are and haven't seen her around the castle." "Doesn't mean she hasn't been around," Sirius shrugged. "Great gift being a metamorph." "Do you know where her rooms are?" Harry questioned irritably. "No," Sirius denied, "but I'm sure one of the elves can point you in the right direction." Harry let his head hit the table at the simplicity. "Not a word," he growled as he stood and exited the room, hurriedly. "For a bright kid, he's bloody dim, that one," Sirius muttered as he resumed his reading. Break. Since the day she had spent in Hogsmeade, Nymphadora Tonks had been unable to shake the bad mood she had found herself in. If anything, it had only worsened. The article in the Prophet the following morning had bothered her more than her parents had, but both had paled in comparison to seeing several girls accost Harry and witnessing the discomfort he felt under the attention. She wanted to curse them all but managed to control herself. It was not her place to do such a thing, despite the way she knew it bothered him and herself, if she was being honest. It made her very uncomfortable, and for that reason, she distanced herself from him over the past couple of days. She cared for him. She could admit that, but being away from him served only to worsen her mood and increase the hurt she was feeling, to the point that her transformations would not work the way she wished. As things were, she could only maintain the most minor of changes. Gone were her vibrant colors of choice, and now both her hair and eyes were dull, something that she had no control over. To avoid notice, she had donned her Hogwarts robes and told Dumbledore that she would be taking some time undercover to look out for any potential problems or gain some intelligence. The man had praised her ingenuity and sent her on her way, and Nymphadora had breathed a sigh of relief. But she knew the measure could only be temporary. It, however, gave her some much-needed time to regain control of her abilities, though they showed no signs of resurfacing yet. Try as she might, she just could not shake the mood she was in, and she knew that it was this that was hindering her abilities. She was pulled from her thoughts by a knock on the door. "Who is it?" she called as she approached. "It's me," the voice of Harry replied, nervously halting her in her steps. "What do you want, Harry?" she sighed, her stomach clenching at her biting tone. She heard him sigh deeply before he replied. "I just wanted to see if you're okay." "I'm fine," she answered sadly, though she hid it well. The silence between them extended, her unmoving and uncertain if he was still even there. "I'm sorry," she heard him say in little more than a whisper. "If I've done anything to upset you, or if it is the article, then I'm sorry. The last thing I wanted was for you to look bad." The clenching shifted from her stomach to her chest at his tone, and she immediately stepped forward as she heard his footsteps recede and pulled the door open. "It's not you," she said to his retreating back. He turned to face her and smiled at her appearance. "You didn't write it," she sighed. "Then why have you avoided me?" he asked with a frown. Tonks shrugged and hung her head slightly. "I don't know. I thought you wouldn't want to see me. That picture didn't look good." "I don't care about the picture," he returned. "I don't care what anyone says. You're my friend, and you mean more to me than any of them or their opinions." "It could have made it harder for you to get a date for the ball," she pointed out. "I wish," he muttered. "Not happy with the French girls or the Slytherin?" she questioned with a forced smirk. Harry shook his head irritably. "I don't even want to go," he sighed. "But if I have to, I'd rather go with someone I know." He frowned in thought before his eyes lit up. "Would you go with me?" Tonks' eyes widened and she shook her head. "That's not a good idea," she replied weakly. "I'm a terrible dancer," she tried. "Please?" Harry pleaded as he took one of her hands. "I'm asking you as a friend." She felt her mouth go dry as she fixated on their intertwined hands. How could she say no to him? The truth was, she knew she couldn't, even if she knew it would hurt her in the long run. Unable to speak, she nodded her head and genuinely returned the smile she received. "Thank you," Harry breathed, "for everything." "You'd better make it worth my while," she warned, managed to quip. "I don't wear dresses for anything, but I suppose I will have to for this," she added with a frown. "You can wear whatever you like, Tonks. It doesn't matter to me," he replied with a shrug. She felt her heart warm at his words and sink soon after. He was so understanding of her, and he didn't even know how much such a simple gesture meant. It ached just as much as it filled her with happiness that he could treat her in such a way. "What is with your hair?" he questioned suddenly, pulling her from her musings. "Oh, I've been doing some undercover stuff around the school," she explained quickly. "It suits you," he replied with a smile. "It's strange. I see you with different hair and different eyes all the time, but this is what I see when I think of you or feel your magic." Tonks swallowed deeply before shaking her head. "It's boring," she huffed, as she pulled at her naturally light brown. Harry chuckled. "No, it isn't," he denied. "You are far from boring even without the colored hair or eyes." "I've not looked like this since I was 14, Tonks shrugged, pushing his comment aside. "Even like this, they all hated me." "Who did?" Harry asked, confused. "The girls at school," she whispered in response. Harry gave her hand a squeeze. "Jealousy does that," Harry sympathized. "But you should always do what makes you comfortable. If that's your colorful hair, then that is up to you. I was only saying that it looks nice," he explained. Tonks shook her head. You know I'm not mad at you. You don't have to say it to make me feel better. I wasn't, Harry denied sincerely. I meant every word. Now how about we go for a fly? I'm sick of being inside the castle and you can scare away anyone that bothers me, he offered with a grin. I'm a disaster on a broom, Tonks muttered shyly. Then you can come on with me, Harry insisted as he pulled along the protesting metamorph in his wake, now sporting red locks and a matching blush. It was with a slight hesitance that Nymphadora Tonks entered the waiting room in the office belonging to her parents. Her father had opened their practice a few years after she had been born and had worked his way up to be a well-respected lawyer over years, supported by her mother who was as sought after in the field herself. It was not, however, a matter of legalities that brought the metamorph here today, but one of a more personal and pressing nature. The Yule Ball was just over a week away, and the woman had found herself in quite the quandary. She needed advice on what to wear. Other than the burden of fashion, things had returned to be almost what they were before the announcement of the ball and the article in the Prophet. On a daily basis she would spend time with Harry, practicing magic or showing him around the castle, something he no longer held reservations doing since he could now politely decline would-be suitors by explaining that he had indeed found himself a date for the ball. Word on that had spread quickly. Most had taken the news well where others had been displeased. Many had expected that he would escort someone for political purposes, and those that perceived to have been snubbed were vocal in their displeasure of his decision. She was a half-blood, and for her to be chosen over them was seen to be quite the insult. Not that any would dare say as much to Harry directly. His performance against the dragon certainly dissuaded any from potentially provoking his ire. Nymphadora herself had been elated that he had asked her at first. She cared little for the childish whisperings, nor the hushed remarks about her she had endured that. But shopping for a dress was a whole new thing, and she had no idea where to even begin. It had taken some time to gather the courage to approach her mother for assistance on this, and with only days remaining before the ball she found herself here. Nymphadora? Her mother questioned with a slight frown from her open office door. Tonks gave her a smile and entered before closing the door behind her. "Hello, Mum!" She greeted her with a kiss on the cheek and proceeded to take the seat opposite. Andromeda shook away the bemused look as she followed her daughter's lead and sat in her own chair. "You're in a better mood than the last time we saw you," she observed. Tonks released a deep breath as she nodded. "I'm sorry, I was just so confused with a lot of things," she briefly explained. Andromeda smiled understandingly. "So, everything is okay now?" she pressed. "Better than it was," Tonks confirmed. Andromeda sighed lightly as she looked upon the girl. She seemed much happier than she had been. Her hair was back to its usual vibrancy and she wasn't so upset, but something was bothering her. "What's wrong, Dora?" she asked. "You never visit me here, so it must be important. I need your help, but you have to promise that you won't overreact or jump to conclusions," Tonks all but demanded. "I won't," Andromeda agreed. Tonks scrutinized her through narrowed eyes before shaking her head slightly. "I need you to help me find a dress," she mumbled. "A dress?" Andromeda returned with a frown. Tonks nodded. "Harry asked me to be his date for the ball. As friends," she finished firmly as Andromeda's eyes lit up. It took a moment for the older woman to compose herself. "Of course, I'll help you, sweetie," she offered. "What sort of dress were you thinking of?" "I have no idea," Tonks sighed. "I've never bought one before." Andromeda failed to hide her grin. "Well, buying a dress is difficult and it will be much harder for you," she replied apologetically. "You could wear any dress you want to because you can change to suit it," she explained. Tonks groaned at the enormity of the task ahead. "It's okay," her mother comforted. "We can make it easier." "What color robes is he wearing?" "He said his are black and green," Tonks answered. Andromeda nodded thoughtfully. "And what are you planning for? How you're going to look?" She took hold of one of her red locks and shrugged. "I think I might tone it down a little," she revealed shyly. Andromeda frowned. "Tone it down?" she asked, surprised. Tonks nodded. "He saw me when I was having trouble with my morphing. It's the only time he mentioned how I look," she muttered. She took a heavy breath. "He said, that's how he sees me anyway. It wasn't my natural form, but not so far off. Andromeda gave her daughter a sad smile. Dora, if he's never spoken about how you look, then it clearly doesn't matter to him. You should always be how you feel comfortable. Nymphadora opened her mouth to speak but closed it soon after and sighed. I'm more comfortable like this, she replied as she pointed to herself. I've been this way for so long that I don't think I can be any other way. Not around other people. Then be whatever you're comfortable with, Andromeda advised. If you're not sure yet, then black will be your best option for a dress. It will go with any color you choose to have. Okay, so where do we start? Andromeda simply beamed as she pulled her daughter from her chair and dragged her from the office. Harry hissed a stream of parcel tongue as he threw his egg against the wall, beyond furious at the implications of what was to come. It had taken the better part of the past 2 weeks for him to figure out the clue. He had attempted translation spells. He had tried to decipher the arithmancy behind the magic of the egg, and he had even tried to damage it in his moments of anger, but to no avail. His breakthrough came only when he pondered exactly what it was he was trying to do. It was a language he was hearing, of that he had no doubt. The difficulty was identifying it. A standard translation spell theoretically should have worked, but it had done nothing. The only other possibility was that it was a language that needed certain conditions to be heard. That had led him to the library, which had yielded almost nothing. Strangely enough, it was Charlie that had mentioned that Barty Crouch was famous for his linguistic talents, which had set Harry on a different path. One more fruitful. After all, if Barty was a master at employing different tongues, then it was only logical that he was the key to solving this task. After a brief conversation with Aunt Cassie, Harry had obtained a copy of Wizarding Nobility, Who's Who in Magical Britain. The list of languages the man was fluent in was exhaustive, but for the most part could be ruled out. He had been left with 3 possibilities, and it hadn't taken him long to deduce which one it was. Mermish. He knew that there was a colony of them in the lake, and it made perfect sense. Immediately he had filled the bath and placed the egg under the water before opening it, sighing in relief as words he could understand spilled from it. After listening to the verse several times, he'd spent several minutes deep in thought before his angry outburst. There was absolutely no way they could take anything that he treasured, let alone what he treasured most. He certainly would not part with his wand, and anything else he held dear was in his trunk under several curses and parcel tongue passwords. That left only one option, and that did not sit well with him. How dare they? He spat. It was bad enough that he had been placed into this tournament against his will, and now it seemed that they would be dragging other unwilling people into it. That did not sit well with the teen. He was pulled from his thoughts by a knock on the door. Harry? Sirius called. Are you okay? Harry took a few calming breaths before unlocking the door and exiting the bathroom. I figured out the egg, he sighed. What is it? Sirius asked with a deep frown. Harry shook his head. They are going to take someone I care about and put them under the lake. I will have 1 hour to rescue them, he explained. Sirius nodded as he rubbed his eyes. That doesn't surprise me, he muttered. Don't worry, we will keep everyone on guard the week leading up to it. We won't let them take any of us. Harry nodded. Now I just need to think of what I will do during the task. Gillyweed is an option, but so is transfiguration, he mused aloud. Well, you have time to think about it, Sirius pointed out. Knowing you, you'll come up with something ridiculous, he added amusedly. I have a few things worth looking into, Harry replied coyly. For now, I'm just going to focus on getting the ball over with. Ah, you'll have fun? Sirius dismissed. I'm still surprised you asked Tonks after what happened with the article. Harry shrugged. It doesn't matter what I say or do, he sighed. They'll always have something to say. At least this way I'm going with someone I know and not someone trying to cozy up to me for political reasons. That's how most will see it when you arrive with her, Harry. They will say that she is using you to get in with the blacks, or that Andromeda has put her up to it, he explained. Then let them think that, Harry returned. I know that's not true, and that's all that matters. Sirius smiled at his son. This was one of the things he respected about Harry. He truly had no care for what anyone else thought and did what he wanted to despite what others would say and think. When he had been younger, he was quite the opposite. always willing to please and do whatever he had to earn the approval of others. Over the last few years that had changed. He focused much more on himself and only those he truly cared for. He was no longer the pliant, abused and meek boy he had rescued. He was on his way to becoming a man that Sirius was proud of. Leo took a deep breath of fresh as he exited the castle, the first time he had done so in almost 9 days. For the most part he enjoyed working under the tutelage of Cassiopeia Black, but he could not deny that she had a very high level of expectation from him. Day in and day out she would put him through his paces just as much as his former instructor at school did, though they were much more averse to using the same measure Aunt Cassie employed to motivate him. That aside, he was enjoying every moment of it. He had a gift for battle magic, and the tuition in what most would consider darker aspects was proving to be similar. Today, however, was a well-deserved and needed day off, for the most part. He still had to secure a date for the ball, much to his own annoyance. He had hoped that Harry would drop the subject now that he was taking Tonks, but it had only served in having his friend remind him daily. Not that he discussed it with him, but the look of expectancy he received every morning at the breakfast table was more than enough to get the message across. Thus, he found himself outside hoping that he would find a suitable girl to take and not make a complete fool of himself. He knew less about the opposite sex than Harry, and the boy was clueless to a fault. He shook his head as he walked in the direction of the forest, thinking that maybe some time with Rasputin would inspire him, though he doubted it. That creature wouldn't have a clue on how to woo a female. He was passing the entrance to the Quidditch stadium when his attention was grabbed by a commotion by the gates. A large group of students in robes with a green trim were harassing a smaller assembly in red and gold. Identifying the 2 red-headed twins made him want to continue on his way, but the blonde at the front of the other group had him pausing. The redheads were irritating, but the Malfoy boy was nothing but a bully, just like his father. Noticing that the exchange was soon to get rather unpleasant, he pushed his way through the larger and placed a firm hand on the shoulder of the boy. Draco, I'm pleased to see that you're doing much better. Please do thank your father on my behalf for his generosity. I didn't get the chance to myself, as he didn't seem too keen on being in my presence any longer than necessary. The boy flinched, his face flushing immediately a purple color. What is he talking about, Draco? A dark-haired, rodent-like boy questioned. Oh, did he not tell you? Lucius Malfoy was very pleased that I saved his son's life, and even rewarded me with a rather tidy sum. Leo explained enthusiastically. You don't need me to save you again, do you? He added malevolently as he drew his wand. By now Draco was trembling in fury, but shook his head, paling slightly as the wand was pointed in his direction. No, he ground out. Shame, Leo sighed. Best you all run along before I decide to start saving you all. Most of them were wary, but one stepped forward, older than the rest but who wore a mask of fury. You filthy mudblood, he hissed as he reached for his wand, only for a sickening crunch to be heard as a left hook from Leo clattered against his jaw. The boy collapsed in an unmoving heap, causing the rest of his housemates to take a step back and look on in shock at what had become of him. How clumsy, Leo commented. I think you should probably get him to the hospital wing. That was quite a nasty fall, he added as he gestured to the 2 biggest of the group flanking the Malfoy boy. They nodded dumbly as they picked their fallen comrade up between them, and the group disappeared without another word. Did you really get money from Lucius Malfoy for cursing his son? The voice of one of the twins broke in. Aye, Leo confirmed. He wasn't happy at first, but when he saw it from my point of view, he was rather inclined to reward me. The 2 redheads began whispering amongst themselves excitedly. We could have handled them, you know, Angelina huffed. Leo snorted. 12 against 5 in your position would not have ended well for you. You would have been overwhelmed and you had no solid defense. That on top of the fact that you are already fatigued from training would be a disaster to even try it, he explained with a shrug. Oh, I didn't really think of it like that, the girl replied with a thoughtful frown. When in a fight you should always consider your advantages and disadvantages, he said firmly. If the odds are against you, find a way out and fight another day. That's just being a coward, Alicia returned. That's being smart, Leo countered. You can't win if you're dead. I suppose not, Alicia conceded. Why did you step in then? It didn't increase our odds, because I had the advantage over their leader. He is a fool, but not so much a fool to try to attack someone he has been bested by, not so openly at least. He will leave that to his idiot of a father, lass, Leo answered. Fair enough, Alicia agreed reluctantly. Leo simply shook his head and began heading towards the forest once more. Oi, one of the twins called. Did you teach our brother a spell to stick us together? Leo fought down his smirk as she shook his head. Me? Now why would I do that? He asked, not able to hide his grin any longer. Well, if you did, then I guess that this makes us even, the other broke in. We were looking forward to pranking you. Leo smiled challengingly at the pair. I would advise against it. I've spent a lot of time with Sirius Black, one of the infamous marauders, he revealed with a wink, leaving two wide-eyed twins in his wake as resumed his walking. He had only managed a few steps when he realized that he was being followed. He turned to find one of the girls approaching him wearing a nervous smile. I just wanted to apologize, she began. I did try to look for you, but I didn't know where you would be. Apologize? Leo asked with a frown. What for? For talking about Ireland before, Katie clarified. I recognized your accent and thought Hat was where you lived. Leo shook his head as he remembered the conversation. Think nothing of it, lass, he insisted. I am from there, but things weren't ever good, so I moved on. Not your fault, he added with a smile of his own. Katie breathed a sigh of relief and turned back towards the four teammates waiting for her. Hold up, Leo called as he followed. I know this is out of the blue and late, he said sheepishly, but would you already have a date to this ball thing? Katie blushed slightly as she shook her head in response. No, I was just going to go home for Christmas. Most boys don't like that I am better than them at Quidditch, and being a half-blood doesn't really help, she explained. Well, I'd like to take you if you don't mind, Leo replied. Only if it won't ruin Christmas for your family. Katie smiled as she nodded. I'd like that, she replied. You will have to put up with those two, though, she added as she pointed at Fred and George over her shoulder with a thumb. Hey, a price worth paying, Leo answered. Do you already have a dress? Katie shook her head. No, but I can come up with something. Nonsense, lass. I sprung this on you. The least I can do is take you to get one. You don't mind sneaking out for a bit, do you? I'm sure we can find us a shop somewhere, he offered. Katie laughed. You're taking me to the ball and you want to get me a dress? Where's the downside? Seems like the right thing to do, Leo answered with a thoughtful frown. Best you explain to them where we are going. I don't need the gingers or the other two out for my blood. Katie smiled as she almost ran back to the others. After a quick exchange with the two girls, she returned as Fred and George gave Leo a thumbs up from behind her, whilst Alicia and Angelina gazed at him warningly. Ready? Katie asked breathlessly. Aye, Leo answered as he offered her his arm, not mentioning the fact that she was still wearing her training gear from Quidditch practice. After almost 6 hours of shopping in which she tried on more dresses than she thought even existed, a thoroughly fed-up Tonks arrived at the Black Rooms. Sirius was lounging on the sofa and Harry was studying an old tome at the table. With a frown she approached the latter and flicked him on the ear, eliciting a yelp of shock from the unsuspecting boy. Ow, what was that for? He questioned as he rubbed away the sting. I spent my entire day trying on dresses, being dragged from shop to shop and treated like my mother's personal dress-up doll, she growled. Sirius snickered but silenced quickly when Tonks glared in his direction. How is that my fault? Harry asked. It isn't, Tonks sighed, but you invited me to the ball, so I'm blaming you. If you remember correctly, I told you to wear whatever you're comfortable in, Harry pointed out. Tonks shrugged. I'll blend in more if I wear a dress, she replied. Harry shook his head as he grinned. I've got someone for you to meet, he informed her. Tonks frowned. Who? Instead of answering, Harry hissed and a large black snake emerged from within his sleeve, startling the girl into taking a hurried step back and tripping over her feet. This is Mira, he introduced as he stroked its head. You bloody idiot, I almost wet myself. Tonks scolded him, eyeing the reptile warily. Harry chuckled. The snake reared up and hissed loudly. Whatever it said caused Harry to flush and speak back rapidly. "What did she say?" Tonks questioned, alarmed that the creature actually looked amused. "Nothing," Harry returned quickly. "Nothing?" Tonks asked in disbelief. Harry hissed again and shook his head. "She said that she can smell you on me," he muttered. Sirius guffawed from his position on the couch as Tonks blushed a brighter pink than Harry. "Not like that, you disgusting pig," Tonks growled. "Oh, you had better be free on Boxing Day. Mother has invited you for dinner," she revealed with a smirk. "You'd better be ready to grovel." Sirius paled at the words, all signs of his previous amusement all but gone. Harry laughed at the plight of his father, but his own mirth vanished soon after. "You've been invited too," Tonks continued, wincing slightly. "You don't have to go. You can just say that as the future head of the family you have to refuse because she was banished," she added hurriedly. Harry shook his head. "I would love to meet her," he responded with a teasing smile. "How else will I get all of the embarrassing stories of you growing up?" Tonks was horrified that he had agreed, and the thought of him speaking to her mother. The woman was certainly not shy about sharing tales of her adventures. "There's a lot of them. I remember one time that Andy was trying to dress her and she escaped into the garden with no clothes on. We found her an hour later asleep under a tree," Sirius piped up. Harry snorted and Tonks glared at her older cousin. "I'm sure Mum will be happy to share a few about you too, Sirius," Tonks replied with a vindictive smile of her own. The man shook his head and mumbled under his breath, unhappily. "So did you just come here to hit me?" Harry asked the metamorph. "That was the main thing," Tonks answered with a smirk. "We could always do something." "Like what?" he asked with a frown. Tonks shrugged. "As long as it doesn't involve wearing dresses, I don't mind." "We could always duel or go out on my bike," Harry offered. "Your bike?" Harry nodded excitedly as he pulled her towards his room and opened his trunk. He removed a miniature orange and black motorcycle. "Sirius got it for my birthday," he explained. "I haven't really used it much." "He bought you a motorcycle?" Tonks sighed as she shook her head. "Well, he did catch me riding his once," Harry explained sheepishly. "He said he'd get me my own if I wanted one." Tonks laughed. "A bit of a rebel, aren't you, Harry?" she said approvingly. "I have my moments," he returned as he led her from the room. "We're going out on the bike," he told Sirius, who sat up immediately. "All right," he sighed. "No Muggle police this time, and stay away from the biker pubs. I will not be coming to get you out of a cell," he warned. "That wasn't my fault," Harry protested. "Leo punched the guy. I tried to get him out. Besides, they started it." Sirius raised an eyebrow at him. "Just behave," Sirius said sternly. Harry nodded as the pair exited and made their way out of the castle. "Bar fights?" Tonks questioned. Harry shook his head. "It really wasn't our fault," he protested. "They didn't like Leo because he's Irish." "It was fun, though," he added with a grin as he resized the bike and mounted it before putting on his helmet and offering Tonks another. The engine fired into life, and the woman wrapped her arms around his waist tightly, squeezing even more so as they picked up speed and left Hogwarts in the distance only a moment later. Leo quickly pulled Katie aside as the sound of an approaching bike sped towards them as they were walking through Hogsmeade. For Leo, the day had been good if not a little strange. He had expected to spend some time with his companion in the forest. Instead, he had ended up escorting a rather beautiful girl whilst she shopped for dresses and other things. The experience was a new one for him, but he couldn't deny that he had enjoyed it. Katie was easy to talk to, down to earth, and just fun to be around. He had happily waited for her as she tried on her outfits, shoes and such included. At the end of the day, the girl had walked away with 2 new dresses, some shoes and even a bag at his insistence. He personally couldn't think of any better way to spend Lucius Malfoy's money other than the home he would purchase at the end of the year. There was ample money for such a thing, but something he would ponder closer to the time. He was almost certain he would end up in Japan, though the feeling of being so far away from Harry did not sit well with him. Being away from the rest of the Blacks for that matter. "Here he comes," he chuckled as the bright orange bike came into view and screeched to a halt as it reached the pair. Harry took off his helmet and looked between him and Katie as he shook his head. "Are you going to introduce us?" he questioned. "Katie, this is Harry," Leo sighed. "Harry, this is Katie Bell," he complied. "My date for the ball." Harry offered the girl his hand, which she took nervously. "I can't believe he had the balls to ask you," Harry deadpanned. Katie raised an eyebrow at him. "What makes you think that I didn't ask him?" she retorted. Harry smirked as he nodded. "I like her," he declared. "Where have you been?" "He took me dress shopping," Katie informed them. "He's been really sweet." Harry frowned as Tonks swatted him across the shoulder. "Why didn't I think of dragging you along?" she growled. "He offered to take me," Katie pointed out, causing Leo to rub the back of his neck awkwardly. "Aye, it was fun," he replied with a smile. Harry shook his head. "Now you're just making me look bad," he moaned, though he was grinning. "Have you got your bike?" Leo nodded. "Aye," he answered as he patted his pocket. "Do you want to go for a ride, lass?" Katie nodded nervously. "I'm probably in for a detention already, so why not?" "No need to worry," Leo assured her. "It's Tonks that should being on the back with him," he added as he jerked a thumb in Harry's direction. "I'll make sure you get back safe." Katie and Tonks laughed as Harry sputtered incoherently. "Oi, I can ride," he bit back. "Aye, I know," Leo soothed. "I'm sure Tonks wouldn't mind you sitting behind her if you get in trouble." Both Tonks and Harry blushed, lost for words as Leo set up his bike and helped Katie on, who was giggling at the two attempting to immolate the Irish boy with their respective glares. Leo gave the pair a grin as he took off ahead, waving at the two of them. "I'm going to curse him," Tonks vowed. "Aye," Harry mocked before placing his helmet back on and following in their wake. It was just before midnight that Katie returned to the common room, having received a look of disapproval from the fat lady. Thankfully, it was empty and she made her way to the dorm, she said, with Angelina and Alicia unimpeded. Strictly speaking, she should be in the room above them, but as they'd always had a bed free, she had opted to stay with them since first year. Even the elves now put her trunk in the room every September. "Where have you been?" Alicia hissed as she entered. "We had to tell McGonagall that you were asleep." "Sorry," Katie replied. "I kind of got caught up," she said as she placed her bags on her bed. Alicia smirked. "So, how was it?" Angelina inquired eagerly. Katie smiled wistfully. "He's really nice," she answered. "We went shopping, he brought me dinner and even took me on his motorbike." The other girls giggled. "I think our Kate is smitten," Alicia sighed dramatically. Katie responded by throwing a pillow at her friend as she tried to hide her blush. "He is really sweet," she replied. "He's a little shy, but he's a good guy. He didn't complain once about how long I was taking to pick a dress. He even got me back here without us getting caught." "Doesn't hurt that he's handsome," Alicia quipped. "Or that accent," Angelina added. Katie's blush deepened as she shook her head and tried to hide her face. "So you're looking forward to the ball?" Alicia pressed. Katie nodded shyly. "Yeah, I really am," she answered. "I think I'm going to enjoy it." Nymphadora Tonks awoke in her old bedroom at her parents' on Christmas morning, a light tapping at her window rousing her from her sleep. Grumpily she stood and allowed the persistent owl entrance. She grumbled under her breath as she relieved it of its burden and sent it on its way. Yawning, she enlarged the small sack and emptied it onto her bed before retrieving a card that was attached to one of the 4 parcels and read it. To Tonks. "Have a wonderful Christmas and keep an eye on those 2 tonight. Love, Sirius." She shook her head as she opened his present and marveled at the invisibility cloak he had gifted her. It would certainly come in handy at work. She set it aside and opened the next one, a bottle of Ogden's single barrel aged 20 years. It was a rare vintage, one she wouldn't part with her own galleons for. There was another note, this one stacked to the side of the bottle. "Tonks, Merry Xmas, lass. Leo. P.S. If you want to ever hear Harry sing, give him a few of these. He's not half bad." Tonks laughed as she stored that information away for later. She grabbed the smallest of the remaining 2 presents and removed the card from the front. Recognizing Harry's neat scrawl, he removed it from the envelope. "Tonks, I can't imagine you enjoying jewelry, but here's something for you to wear tonight."
Thank you again.
Harry. She frowned as she opened the parcel hesitantly. Harry was right, she had never taken to jewelry, and she was not intending on wearing any tonight if she could help it. She laughed as she tore the paper off, and a wand holster fell into her lap along with another note. "This will stay invisible on your arm. Merlin knows where you would have put your wand without it." Harry, she shook her head in mirth as she attached it to her arm and slid her wand in. The two immediately became invisible but rematerialized when she flicked it into her hand. "Handy," she chuckled as she reached for the final package. Noticing it was another one from Harry, she frowned. The box was larger than the others had been and significantly heavier. She opened the top to reveal a motorcycle helmet that changed colors to match her hair when she lifted. Inside the box was another note. "Dear Tonks, Merry Christmas. Harry X. P.S. The helmet has been charmed to change to whatever color you like." She smiled warmly as she held it. She had enjoyed her time on the bike with him more than she thought she would have, and hoped this was a promise that she would get to do it again. It was a good start to the day, though she was not sure about the rest of it. She found that when she pondered the evening to come she was nervous, a smattering of butterflies having formed in her stomach at the thought. She didn't know if it was that she wasn't a good dancer and all eyes would be on her and Harry, or the fact that she would be wearing a dress in front of them all. She shook her head. It mattered not. She was doing this for Harry, and she would do her best to not let him down and embarrass herself in the process. Christmas Day had been a relaxed affair for Harry. He had breakfast with Sirius, Cassie and Leo, and he had spent some time doing some light training with the latter of the trio before having lunch with the addition of his grandfather to the group. Charlie had visited briefly along with his friends Ron and Hermione, who had gifted Leo with a box of treats from Honey Dukes, the girl thoroughly embarrassing him as she gave him a hug. He in turn had given them both a wrapped gift and asked Hermione to deliver something to Katie on his behalf. Much to Charlie's surprise, Leo had gifted him a metal shield that turned into a bracelet when it wasn't being used, and Harry had given him a book on low-power curses for him to learn. Charlie had returned the favor by giving Harry a book on the Potter family magic and Leo a Gryffindor Quidditch shirt, smirking at him knowingly. "She hasn't shut up about you," he sighed with a wink. Leo had mumbled under his breath as he flushed uncontrollably. Shortly after, the younger teens left and Harry and Leo retreated to their rooms to ready themselves for the ball. "You don't clean up too badly," Cassie remarked as she straightened Leo's robes and fussed over him, much to Harry's amusement. "Git," Leo muttered, but did not protest against the attention Cassiopeia gave him. Sirius grinned as he ruffled Harry's hair and followed suit. "Now you better be on your best behavior," Sirius warned. "We will," Harry sighed. "I don't mean that. I mean with Tonks," Sirius retorted with a chuckle. "I won't have you sullying her." Harry turned red as he swatted his father's hand away irritably. "Shut up," he groaned. "I'm not you, you know." "And in that I have failed," Sirius quipped. "By the time I was your age, I'd been with a prefect from every house, and even the head girl," he informed the horrified boy. "I don't want to hear it," Harry yelped. "You're a bloody disgrace." "Ah, the words of my sweet mother," Sirius sighed wistfully. "Anyway, you'd best be off. You don't want to keep your dates waiting," he added as he waggled his eyebrows. Harry huffed in disgust as the pair exited the room. "Do you believe him?" Leo asked. Harry shook his head. "Knowing him, I'd bet my life that it's true," he grumbled as the two reached the packed entrance hall. "There's Katie," Leo whispered only a few minutes after their arrival and rushed off towards the girl, without bidding Harry farewell. Harry frowned after the boy and smiled as he watched the greeting between them, both looking rather pink in the cheeks. "Oh, aren't they cute?" The voice of Tonks interrupted his observations. He turned to face her, only for his mouth to dry instantly. He had no words to describe how she looked and couldn't speak them even if he did. Her hair had been styled to be long and wavy, falling past her shoulders and colored a dark red. She stood taller than he was used to seeing her, the black heels matching the form-fitting black dress she wore in an off-the-shoulder cut. "It's too much, isn't it?" Tonks mumbled, her hands fidgeting uncomfortably. Harry steadied them with his own as he shook his head. "No, you look amazing," he disagreed. "Beautiful," he added under his breath. The two shared a smile before the moment was interrupted by the Scottish brogue of the deputy headmistress. "Mr. Black, Miss Tonks," she greeted them, "please follow me to where the other champions are waiting. You are to be announced before you enter the hall," she explained. With a shrug, the pair followed the tartan-clad woman to where Crumb, Diggory and Delacour were stood with their dates. Hermione, who was surprisingly attending with Crumb, gave them a wave and warm smile. "Hi, Harry," she greeted him enthusiastically. "Hello, Hermione," Harry replied. "Why aren't you quite the picture?" "You look fantastic," he offered sincerely, causing the girl to blush. "You have your date, Black?" Crumb broke in, absent of his usually surly demeanor, his eyes crinkling in mirth above the grin he wore. "My apologies, Mr. Crumb," Harry returned. "You're a lucky man, but you're right, I do have a date. Miss Tonks could certainly do better than me, as I'm sure Miss Granger could too," he added with a chuckle. "Ah," Victor agreed. "We have both done better than we deserve." "Can't say the same for Delacour," Harry said as he nodded towards the boy she had brought. His eyes were misted over and his mouth agape as he stared at his date vacantly. "No control," Victor sighed in disgust. Harry nodded as McGonagall beckoned the 8 of them forward. "You will enter when you are called and take a seat at the table set up on the platform at the front of the room," she informed them. "You will eat and then you will open the dance. When that is done, the rest of the evening is your own." They nodded their understanding before the woman disappeared. Delacour and her date, Davis, were called first, followed by Diggory and Chang, and then Crumb and Hermione second to last. "Nervous?" Harry asked. Tonks swallowed deeply as she nodded and Harry took her hand. Squeezing it gently, he waited for them to be announced. And finally an unfamiliar voice sounded, the current leader of the Triwizard Tournament, with his date, Nymphadora Tonks. "Please welcome Harry Black." "Sorry about that," Harry offered as he led her into the hall amidst the applause. "Don't worry," Tonks replied as she smiled through her nerves under the many watchful eyes of those gathered. When they eventually reached the table, Harry pulled out her chair for her before taking his own next to Victor, leaving Tonks sat next to Madame Maxime with the Hogwarts gamekeeper to her on the end. He watched how the woman ordered her desired dish and mimicked her, instructing Tonks on how to do the same. "What's wrong?" he asked the girl, noticing that she had gone quiet during the meal. "I really can't dance, Harry," she whispered. "It's going to be bad." Harry chuckled. "It doesn't matter, Tonks," he assured her. "Just follow my lead and look at me and it will be over before you know it," he comforted. She nodded appreciatively and finished her food just in time for Dumbledore to stand and tap a spoon against his goblet, silencing the room immediately. "Ladies and gentlemen, our champions and their partners will now officially open the Yule Ball with a dance," he announced, gesturing towards the dance floor that had been added for the event. Tonks smiled weakly as Harry offered her his hand, her legs trembling slightly as she followed his lead. She took a deep breath as they came to a step and looked up towards him as his hand rested on her hip. He gave her a comforting smile of his own as her fingers intertwined in his own, his grip much more certain than hers. He had encouraged her to focus only on him, and that was what she did, something she realized she couldn't avoid if she tried. His larger hand engulfing hers, and his hold on her hip had sent a tingle up her spine, and she couldn't help but be captivated by her eyes. His stare unwavering as he led her into the first step of the traditional waltz. "I'm sorry," she whispered as she stepped on his toe, feeling very self-conscious. Harry simply twirled her in a new direction. "It's okay," he replied unflinchingly. "Forget everything else. It's only us here." And she felt it. She had not paid any heed to the dozens of onlookers or the other champions dancing nearby. The moment he had touched her, she had been fixated on only him. She nodded as she met his gaze once more, the warmth she saw in his now emerald orbs, spreading throughout her own chest. Her own smile formed as she lost herself in the moment, their eyes firmly fixed on one another's. It wasn't until they bumped into another couple that the contact between them broke, and she was filled with a sense of disappointment as Harry released her hand, the mandatory dance for the champions seemingly having finished. "See, that wasn't so bad, was it?" he asked. Tonks shook her head. She avoided dancing as a rule. Much to the consternation of her mother, she had always been too clumsy to find enjoyment in it. That itself had not changed, but the closeness to Harry had made it worth it, made it an enjoyable experience even. It had certainly affected her more than she thought. She had never experienced an intimacy like this, and she found that she wasn't quite ready for it to end. The disappointment at the loss of contact had been unexpected, and though he only stood a foot or so away, it could have been 1,000 miles and the distance would have felt the same. She shook herself from her thoughts. No, it wasn't, she agreed. How are your toes? She questioned, hoping to change the subject. Harry chuckled. All there, he confirmed. How about we get a drink? Tonks nodded and took his offered arm, enjoying the feeling of closeness she had been deprived of since he had released her. Oh, Merlin, she sighed internally. Look at them, Katie sighed as she watched Harry and Tonks dancing. Aye, both as clueless as the other, Leo agreed. How can they not see it? Katie questioned exasperatedly. They cared for each other deeply, even someone as inexperienced as she could see it, and no doubt everyone else had noticed it too, based on the whispered conversations and pointing in their direction that could be seen around the hall. Leo shrugged. Harry has never had a girlfriend, he explained. Maybe he just doesn't know what he's feeling. Katie shook her head. Do you think they'll figure it out? She asked. Leo snorted. Aye, eventually. They'll probably need a swift kick up the arse. Katie giggled. Can you dance as well as him? Leo smirked. Aye, he replied as he offered her his hand. One of the lessons Cassie insisted we both take. They made their way onto the rapidly filling dance floor and joined in the fray of dancing students and staff. Finding a space, Leo pulled her into his arms and began to lead her through the steps. Katie herself was an able dancer, her own lessons as a child proving to be a useful investment of her time. Not bad, lassie, Leo praised. I'm not just graceful in the air, she replied as she spun under and then back into his arms. He smiled at her. Aye, you put me to shame, he returned. Katie shook her head as she grinned. The two danced for an inordinate amount of time before they headed to the drinks table, the hall already significantly emptier than when they had started. Ah, our two twirling pixies have returned, Fred quipped. The dancing duo of Hogwarts, George added. Quite the pair they make, Fred continued. Abandoned us for most of the night, George finished with a bow. Oh, shut up, Katie returned. We weren't gone that long. An hour at least, George piped up. Closer to 2, Fred argued. Enough, you two, Alicia scolded the pair as she arrived and offered Leo and Katie a butterbeer each. Are you having a nice night? Katie nodded. We are, she answered. I didn't know you liked to dance so much, her teammate replied questioningly. Katie attempted to shrug it off. It's okay when you have someone you enjoy doing it with. Well, you'd better get it out of your system. There's only a couple of hours left, Alicia said with a smirk. Katie checked her watch and saw that it was almost 10 p.m. Some fresh air first? Leo offered. Katie nodded and the two left the hall into the crisp air of the Christmas night. She shuddered as the cold wind reached her and smiled gratefully as Leo cast a warming charm on her. Thank you, she said. They walked around the temporary gardens through the other revelers that had sought the outdoors and took a seat on one of the stone benches that had been added. Thank you for the bracelet too, you really didn't have to get me it, she added. Leo simply smiled. You missed a Christmas with your family to be here, he replied. You should at least have something to remember the day by. I would have remembered without it, she mumbled shyly. I wasn't expecting to be here, and the only reason I was going home was because I didn't want to be here alone. Then we both got what we want, he grinned. Katie nodded. And what about after tonight? Do we just go our separate ways? She questioned casually. Leo frowned slightly. If that's what you want, he sighed. But I wouldn't say no to spending more time with you, he added hopefully. It was Katie's turn to frown. Really? She asked disbelievingly. Why? Why wouldn't I? Leo returned. I like being around you, lass. Katie shrugged. I play Quidditch, more than likely better than you, and that's what I want to do when I finish school. Leo chuckled. You're probably right there. Why would that bother me? If it makes you happy, that's all that matters. Katie smiled. You're not like other boys, she muttered. The ones here are either intimidated because I'm better on a broom, or don't talk to me because I'm not a pure blood, she shrugged. Your blood doesn't make you better than anyone else, he grumbled. Harry is a half-blood, and would wipe the floor with all the bigots here. If they can't see what a good lass you are, then they don't deserve you. Katie smiled brightly at him. Are you a pure blood? She asked. Leo nodded. I never knew anything about my family until recently, but I come from a small pure-blood family. It doesn't matter. The closest thing to a family I've got is Aunt Cassie and the rest of the blacks, he explained. Aren't they, really scary? She questioned warily. Leo guffawed. They are, if you go up against them or piss one of them off. Old Arcturus can be a funny chap, and Cassie is the closest thing I had to a mother growing up. You wouldn't know it, and she'd murder me for saying it, but she's got a heart in her somewhere. I'll take your word for it, Katie replied. How about we go get another dance in before this is all over? Katie nodded happily, and the two returned to the great hall and straight onto the dance floor. As the slower songs of the evening began, without hesitation he pulled her into his arms and began swaying to the rhythm, nodding once at Harry, who was dancing with a very comfortable-looking Tonks. As the night drew to a close, Harry and Tonks found themselves amongst the final stragglers, still within the hall and on the dance floor, enveloped in the arms of the other. Further dancing had not been something discussed between them. It was as though they naturally gravitated towards it, each of them caught up in a daze of the festivities. As the final note of the final song faded, they pulled apart almost embarrassedly, each as sheepish as the other, each adorning a look of confusion and what appeared to be guilt as each emerged from the stupor that had befallen them this night. "Shall we go for some air?" Harry questioned. Tonks nodded. "Yeah, I should head to my parents soon. I promised Mum I'd help her with dinner for tomorrow," she explained. "Are you still coming?" "I'll be there," Harry confirmed with a smile. "I promise I won't ask for any stories of little Tonks," he added, taking note of her reticence. "There isn't that much to tell," she replied distractedly as they made their way towards the gates, a comfortable silence falling between them. "Thank you for tonight," Tonks clarified as they left the grounds. "I've never done anything like this before. I never wanted to really, but you made it fun." Harry smiled warmly at her. "No problem," he replied. "I'll remember that for the next time I'm forced into something like this." Tonks shook her head and narrowed her eyes at him good-naturedly, her stomach sinking once more at the thought of being away from him. "Could you do something for me?" she blurted. Harry nodded. "If I can," he answered. Tonks fidgeted nervously and took a deep breath. "Do you remember when we weren't talking and you came to see me?" she asked tentatively. "Yeah," Harry said with a frown. "You said that how I looked then was what my magic felt like," she reminded him. "Can you really feel my magic?" "I said it wasn't far off," he corrected. "And yes, I can feel magic. And you know what people look like, just be sensing it." It was something that she had pondered over the past couple of weeks, but had no intention of mentioning until the words were already out of her mouth. Harry's frown deepened in thought. "I don't think so," he mused aloud. "It's just that you changed the way you look so much that I pay more attention to your magic than what you look like physically. I guess it kind of gives me an image of you in my mind," he explained with a shrug. "Oh," she replied. "What do I look like exactly?" Harry went silent for a moment as he looked at her and smiled before nodding, seemingly satisfied. "I can try to show you if you like," he offered. "Show me? How?" she answered nervously. Instead of answering, he gripped her shoulders gently and closed his eyes. "Relax your magic," he whispered. Hesitantly, she did so and felt his own invade her body. It was a foreign yet comforting feeling, stronger than anything she had ever experienced, and it engulfed her as she allowed it was over her completely. She felt a slight stirring within her own and her body began to change, morphing, though she had no control over it. After a moment, the feeling ended and she found herself looking into his emerald eyes as he smiled at her. "This is what I see when I think of you and feel you near," he explained before he placed a gentle kiss on her cheek. "I'll see you tomorrow, Tonks," he bid her farewell, his blush prominent even in the pale light the moon provided. With that he made his way back towards the castle, leaving behind a breathless metamorph, reeling under the weight of the magic he had pushed into her. It took her several minutes, but she eventually managed to compose herself and apparate onto her parents' street and made her way into the sleepy house, both her mum and dad long since having gone to bed. As quietly as she could, she entered the kitchen and turned on the light, pausing at the sight of her reflection in the window. She was slightly taller than she had been when she left, her waist smaller and chest more pronounced, but it was the differences in her hair and features that were the most striking. Her hair was longer, still wavy, but was now colored a light brown. Her nose was now more delicate, her cheekbones higher and more refined, and her eyes were now a light gray. She hurried forward to get a better look, her mouth agape at the familiar woman staring back at her. It was not a form she would wear in public or even in the privacy of her own rooms. She made a point for her transformation to be the first thing she did every morning to avoid seeing what it was she now faced. With a trembling hand she grazed her fingers over one of her cheeks as the first tear fell. It was like looking at a stranger, but an image she had known well once upon a time, though she had been younger, a victim in truth. No longer did she look as such, and this is what he saw when he thought of her. The voice of her mother pulled her from her thoughts as she entered the kitchen, wand drawn and aimed at her back. "Dora, is that you, sweetie?" Andromeda had been woken by the sound of the front door closing. She had no doubt that her daughter had tried to be quiet, but she had always had a clumsiness to her that she couldn't hide. She had flicked her wand into her hand as she looked upon the woman in her kitchen. Were it not for the lighter hair and different-colored eyes, Nymphadora could easily have been mistaken for her older sister. "It's me," her daughter whispered in response, her defeated tone spurring Andromeda into action. Instinctively, she pulled the girl into a tight hug. "A bad night?" she asked soothingly. Much to her surprise, Dora shook her head after a moment. "No," she whispered. "The opposite more than anything." Andromeda was just as confused as her daughter seemingly was. Her strange appearance aside, there was nothing to suggest she'd had an enjoyable evening. Her confident, bubbly, and vibrant little girl was nowhere to be seen. What stood in front of her was someone oozing vulnerability and uncertainty. She filled the nearby kettle and tapped it with her wand, boiling the water instantly. "You'll have to explain, Dora. If it didn't go badly, then why are you upset?" she asked, as she poured out 2 mugs of tea. "I'm not upset," Tonks denied. "I don't know what I'm feeling," she huffed. Andromeda gave her a sad smile as she sat down. "Why don't you tell me what happened?" she offered. Tonks nodded gratefully as she joined her mother. "I was terrified about tonight. I don't like wearing dresses and I'm awful at dancing," she mumbled. "I almost ran away during dinner because I was so scared." "But you didn't." Tonks shook her head. "Harry told me to just focus on him and not to worry. He said it would be over before I know it," she explained, with a smile. "Then what?" Andromeda pressed lightly as she took a sip from her steaming mug. "We danced," Tonks shrugged. "I did as he said, and it worked. It felt like it was just us and we ended up dancing most of the night. I didn't want it to be over," she finished quietly, worrying her lower lip. Andromeda chuckled. "There's nothing wrong with enjoying dancing, Dora," she pointed out. "It wasn't the dancing, Mum," she sighed. "It was dancing with him. I put it down to the occasion, but I felt different than I would have if it had been anyone else." "And was it the same for him?" Tonks shrugged. "I really don't know. He didn't complain," she replied uncertainly. Andromeda nodded. "Is that why you're feeling the way you are? Because you don't know how he feels about it?" "No, that was nice. Even if it wasn't the same for him, it doesn't matter. It's what I did afterwards," she returned exasperatedly. "Oh, Dora, what did you do?" Andromeda sighed. Tonks took a deep, steadying breath. "You'll remember a few weeks ago when I spent the day with Harry and I found out he had to find a date." Andromeda nodded, the memory of her daughter in the same chair very vivid. "I avoided him for a few days and he came looking for me. It was the same night he asked me to the ball," she explained. "I was having trouble with my morphing and he said the way I looked was similar to what my magic feels like." Andromeda's eyebrows rose. Feeling other people's was not unheard of, but a rather unique talent. I was curious, so I asked him to change me into what he felt, and this is it, she added, motioning to herself. I don't see anything wrong, Dora, Andromeda sighed. It's me, Mum, Tonks retorted. This is what I look like when I don't morph. Andromeda smiled as she shook her head. She hadn't seen her daughter in her natural form since she was 14. You are a very beautiful girl, Dora, with or without all the color, she emphasized. I like him, Mum. I really like him and I don't know what to do, Tonks admitted sadly. I just thought it was because he was nice. He never spoke about my morphing and never commented on anything that I did, and now it feels like he never even noticed it, that he always saw me like this, she added with a shake of her head. That is a good thing, Andromeda returned firmly. Isn't that what you always wanted? Tonks nodded. When I was younger and I had all the problems at school because of what I am, that was what I wanted. I gave up on it a long time ago. I stopped caring and looked the way I wanted to, and people started to leave me alone. Now I feel like that stupid little girl again, and it's all my fault, she choked. Andromeda pulled the girl into her arms and allowed her to vent. What do you mean? She asked, after a few moments had passed. Tonks sniffed and swallowed. This is me, Mum. I'm scared to let anyone close because I think that they'll just want me for what I am. I'm a broken mess. And then he comes along and just makes everything feel better, she sighed. Do you think Harry would do that to you? Andromeda questioned. No, Tonks replied vehemently, but I can't have these feelings for him. He is going to be the head of an important family. I'm just a neurotic half-blood aura, she finished, hanging her head. Oh, sweetie. Andromeda whispered as she tightened her grip around her. I wish you weren't so harsh on yourself. It's true, Tonks mumbled. Do you think what you are bothers him? Tonks shrugged and Andromeda sighed deeply. I could tell you to push it all down and hide it from the world as you have done these past 5 or so years. I could tell you to do the opposite and shout it for everyone in Diagon Alley. This is one of those things that you have to figure out for yourself, but if I were you I'd speak to him, she advised. How would I even begin to explain the mess that I am? Tonks snorted. If he cares, even a little bit, he will listen. I had to do it with your father, Andromeda responded. I saw the way he looked at me and how he was too scared to even talk to me. What did you do? Tonks asked. I made him listen, her mother shrugged, and 25 years later we are still together. That's different, Tonks sighed. But it doesn't have to be, Dora, Andromeda returned. You deserve a chance at happiness just like I did. But it is up to you if you want to take it. Speak to him at least, she pleaded. If he is the boy you've told me all about, he will listen to you and it might turn out to be the best thing you ever did. And what if it goes wrong? Tonks asked worriedly. Then you live with it, but you don't have to spend the rest of your life wondering what could have happened. Andromeda explained. Tonks nodded her understanding. I'll think about it, she agreed. Andromeda smiled as she stood. That's all I'm asking, sweetie. Harry woke the morning after the ball and completed his morning workout, thinking of how the night before had gone. He had never enjoyed events like that and had been dreading attending. But this had been different. He had thought having Tonks with him would have made it at least tolerable. Instead, the night had been much more than he could have imagined. It had felt so right to have her in his arms whilst they moved around the dance floor, oblivious to all around them, and it had felt right that it was her that he had shared the night with. He entered the shower and began to wash himself mechanically as his thoughts remained on the ball. He may have been obtuse, but he knew he cared for her. The few days away had been enough to make him aware of that. Last night, however, was something else, though he couldn't fathom what it was that happened to make it so. It may have been the dancing. It could even have been the way she looked at him whilst they were intertwined, or it could simply have been the surprise he felt that he was enjoying himself. He couldn't be certain. All he knew was that the night had left an impression on him. He thought back to their parting moments. The usually assured girl had seemingly wilted before him, had become what he imagined he was as a young boy. She had become hesitant and made the strange request of him. He knew her ability was a double-edged blade at best, but had complied with her request only so that he could see the nervousness fade. It was the one part of the evening he hadn't enjoyed at all. He couldn't understand why she had asked it of him. Her ability was not something they had ever discussed. It was not important to him. He had a picture of her in his mind, and that was what he always saw when he looked at her, despite her efforts to appear entirely different. With a confused sigh, he left the shower and dressed before entering the living room, where Sirius and Cassie were now eating breakfast with Leo just leaving his own room. "Good night, boys?" Sirius questioned with a lecherous grin. "Aye," Leo answered with a suspicious frown. Sirius snickered as Cassie shot him a disapproving glare. "Harry?" he asked further. The other boy nodded as he sat and helped himself to some fruit. "Any tales of debauchery to share?" Sirius probed. Harry sighed as he shook his head. "No, but even if I did have, I wouldn't tell you. Some of us actually respect discretion." Sirius feigned a look of horror as he pointed accusingly at Cassie. "This is your doing," he grumbled. "You turned them both into gentlemen," he added mock disgust. "You could learn something from them," Cassie replied as she buttered some bread. "Aye," Leo agreed. "You don't really want to hear about him defiling your cousin, do you?" Sirius choked on his coffee as he glared at Harry. "Nothing like that happened," the teen said firmly as his eyes narrowed towards his friend. I know," he soothed. "I saw you leave and you were back here before me." Harry nodded gratefully. "How did it go with you and the lovely Miss Bell?" Sirius asked Leo, recovering from the thoughts that had bothered him only a moment ago. "Was a good night, and that is all I'm saying. She's a good lass," he replied. Sirius shook his head. "Boring, the pair of you," he mumbled. "If I had been there, you'd be in ministry custody," Harry butt in. Leo snorted over a mouthful of cereal. Sirius huffed as he stood, looking between the teens defeatedly. "Fine," he conceded. "Remember, we are going to Andy's today," he reminded Harry. The boy nodded before making his way to his room. He decided that he would keep his outfit smart but casual. He placed a white t-shirt, a pair of dark jeans and some trainers on his bed. With his outfit arranged, he decided that he would go for a fly to clear his head and then practice some magic when he was done. He indulged himself in both, which passed quickly, and he took another shower to clean away the grime and sweat before dressing and fastening a grey parka coat, just as Sirius called him. "Are you ready?" the man asked, as he finished buttoning up a shirt. Harry nodded, knowing his father was more nervous about the visit than he was showing. He hadn't seen Andromeda in over a decade, and if she was anything like Tonks, he was not in for the warmest of welcomes. "Come on then," he sighed. The two of them exited the grounds, the castle having been quiet for the most part. Likely, the students were having a much more relaxed day after the excitement of the ball. "Am I taking you?" Sirius questioned. Harry shook his head. "Show me where we are going," he instructed. Sirius pushed the image of the street to the forefront of his mind and shuddered at Harry's mental probe. It was very subtle, but it was undeniably there. He had always had the ability to unsettle any mind he entered. Thankfully, he did not use the art often, if at all. It was an invasion of privacy that he refused to undertake without permission unless he felt it necessary. Cassie had taught him well. "Got it," Harry declared, before disappearing with only the slightest of pops. Sirius shook his head before following. He had been reluctant to teach him to apparate, but he could not deny it was a necessary skill and could save his life. He arrived and found Harry waiting for him only a few feet away. "It's that one there," he informed him, pointing to a reasonably sized house on the opposite side of the road. Harry smiled as he approached. Tonks was quite a vivacious girl, and it was hard to imagine her growing up in such a quiet, well-kept place. Sirius exhaled a deep breath as he rung the doorbell and attempted to prevent himself from fidgeting. A moment later, the door opened to reveal a middle-aged man with a slight paunch. His hair was a dark blonde, his eyes blue, but his expression guarded. "Sirius," he greeted his father stiffly. "And this must be Harry," he added, his look more wary than it had been whilst addressing his father. Harry couldn't blame him. The man's experiences with his family in the past had not been pleasant. Pushing those thoughts aside, he stepped forward confidently and smiled as he offered the man his hand. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Tonks," he greeted cordially. Ted Tonks hesitated only a moment before gripping the younger man's hand and returning the smile. You too, he responded, his posture relaxing considerably. Come in, he offered, stepping aside. Ande and Dora are just finishing up, he explained. Dora? Harry questioned with a slight frown. Ted chuckled. She tolerates it, he shrugged. I can't go around calling my daughter by my own last name. Harry laughed. That's true, he replied as he removed his coat and hung it on the rack by the door. Sirius followed suit, his eyes darting around the hall. She'll be pleased to see you, Ted assured him. Eventually, he added under his breath. Sirius steeled himself as the man led them into the living room where Tonks was sat on one of the sofas. What are you doing in here? Ted asked. Mum kicked me out, she huffed. I broke one of the plates. Ted barked out a short laugh as he ruffled her hair affectionately. I'm surprised you lasted as long as you did, he praised. Not to worry, you know what she's like when we have people over. Tonks nodded. You're in for it, she said to Sirius, who paled at the words. Harry snickered. She's not wrong, an unamused voice sounded from the doorway. Harry turned to find a very displeased woman scrutinizing his father, hands on hips, her nostrils flaring. Andromeda was without doubt a black, in looks and temper evidently. Sirius paled even more so as Tonks was trembling in mirth. Andromeda stalked towards him and poked the man firmly in the chest, causing him to wince. Almost 15 years, she hissed. You disappear, no letter or anything. You could have been dead and I never would have known. Sorry, and I. Sirius replied. The woman rose a delicate brow at him. You're sorry, she returned heatedly. I mourned for you, Sirius. The war was over and you just never came back. What else was I supposed to think? Sirius nodded his understanding. I should have got in touch, he admitted. I got caught up with raising Harry and everything. I am sorry. Andromeda nodded as she pulled her younger cousin into a hug, surprising him. Don't ever do that to me again, she whispered. I won't, Sirius assured her. Andromeda smiled as she released the man and turned her attention to Harry, who had to fight the urge to not wither under her stare. It's nice to meet you, Harry, she said warmly as she hugged him also. Harry returned it and noticed Tonks trying to hide in her mass of pink hair behind her mother's back. And you, Mrs. Tonks, he replied as her daughter shook her head. Well, dinner is ready, she informed them. Why don't you come through? After the initial frosty greeting Sirius received, the meal was a relaxed affair. Andromeda and Ted were both nice people, and it was easy to see that Tonks took after both in equal measure. Ted was quite a jovial man, quick-witted and very outgoing. Andromeda was much more poised than her husband, but a very warm person in her own way. She doted on her daughter and even Harry, ensuring he had enough to eat. It was easy to see why the woman was his father's favorite relative. She was nothing like the insane Bellatrix or stuffy Narcissa he had heard about growing up. Tonks, on the other hand, had been relatively subdued. Harry had put it down to them being with her parents. She shot him the occasional nervous smile but kept to herself for much of the meal. How about a drink? Ted asked as he stood and made his way to one of the kitchen cabinets. Is whiskey okay? Perfect for me, Sirius declared. Him, he added, pointing to Harry, he can't be trusted. Harry shook his head. Once, he had drunk whiskey with Leo when they were 14. The night did not go exactly as planned. He had somehow ended up singing karaoke and the pair were asked to leave after Leo had passed out, sprawled across the bar. You can't just let it go, he sighed. It wasn't me that was sick on Cassie's rug. True, Sirius conceded, but it was you that woke her up with your singing. Ted laughed as Harry frowned at his father. Is he the reason you were looking old, Sirius? Andromeda questioned with a smirk. Sirius was positively affronted. I'm only 37, he yelped. You look closer to 47, the woman returned. Sirius shook his head. See, you did this to me, he accused, pointing at Harry. And if I turned out like you, you'd look 57, Harry quipped. Make it a double, Ted, Sirius requested. Or better yet, bring the bottle. Ted shot him a look of sympathy as he poured the man a generous measure. Oh, it's okay, Sirius. Andromeda cooed. I'm sure someone will take pity on you one day. Sirius muttered under his breath and drained his glass. It's not for me, he replied with a shrug. I raised him admittedly with Cassie's help. I doubt I've got it in me again. I wasn't that bad, Harry protested. You could have been worse, Sirius conceded. I'm proud of you, Harry. Despite my attempts to corrupt you, you turned out good. So he never stole any of his relatives' underwear? Andromeda broke in. Sirius wore a look of complete embarrassment. You swore you wouldn't tell, he hissed. Andromeda shrugged. Whose underwear? Harry questioned. Mine, Andromeda answered with a shake of her head. I didn't realize they were yours, Sirius replied weakly. I thought they were Priscilla's. Tonks laughed gleefully as Harry stood. I don't think I want to hear this, Harry sighed. I knew you were bad, but your own cousin's underwear. I think I need some air, he declared. I'll come, Tonks volunteered, her eyes still alight in mirth. Maybe you can show him the tree we found you under, Sirius called after them after they exited through the back door, the girl glaring at him as she closed it. The two of them began their walk around the garden in silence, an unfamiliar tension settling. Harry had thought that it was because they were here with her parents, but as the night had wore on, it had become more discernible. Have I done something wrong? He asked suddenly. The thought that he had did not sit well with him. It reminded him of the days they were not talking. No, Tonks sighed. You haven't done anything, Harry. Harry nodded and gave her an awkward half-smile. Then what's bothering you? Something is. I can tell, he added. Tonks ceased her walking as she looked at him, uncertainty clear in her eyes. She exhaled, the sense of vulnerability she had felt the previous night making itself known once again. Can you? She began before cutting herself off. Can I what? Harry urged gently. Tonks attempted a smile of her own. Can you do what you did last night? Change me, she clarified. Harry frowned. Why? He asked. Please? She almost pleaded. Harry nodded and placed his hands on her shoulders as he closed his eyes and followed the same path he had taken the night before. A few moments later, he was staring into the same light grey eyes he had seen. Is this how you really see me? Tonks whispered. It is, Harry answered. He took a moment to study her and nodded. She looked very much like her mother and just the way he had envisioned her in his mind. Why are you crying? He asked, worried he had done something he shouldn't have. Tonks shook her head. It's stupid, she replied. It can't be stupid if it's upsetting you, Harry countered. Tonks gave him a watery smile as she sat on a wooden bench at the end of the garden and motioned for him to join her. It is, she replied with a shrug. I really don't understand, Harry said helplessly. I'm sorry for whatever I did. It's not you, Harry, she assured him. She hadn't planned on having this talk with him, not here, but it now felt unavoidable. She now wished that she hadn't asked. I tried being like this when I was younger, but it was too late, she sighed. What do you mean? Harry questioned worriedly. When I was at school, she explained. When I first got there, everyone wanted me to transform for them. I didn't see any harm in it and I was naive, so I did what I was asked. By the time I got to my third year it changed. I guess the novelty of what I am wore off, and they all realized what I could do. The girls hated me for it because the boys paid more attention to me than them. It wasn't me they were interested in. I was a clumsy little girl, but I could be whatever they wanted, she shrugged. She took another breath before continuing, her eyes firmly on her feet. It hurt me a lot. All the girls I thought were my friends turned their backs on me, and all the boys just saw me as an object. I spent most of my third year trying to be as plain as possible, but that didn't work. Fourth year, I hid myself away as much as I could. By the time fifth year came, I stopped caring and used my abilities to become whatever I felt like. I hid behind them, and people more or less left me alone by then. But I didn't get over why that did to me. Not until I left school. I thought I'd do the right thing and even tried dating a guy. It turns out he had done it for a bet to see if I lived up to my name, she growled. That's why you don't like people using it, Harry broke in. Tonks nodded. It reminds me of how he made me feel and what he would have done. A part of me never really got over it. All of that is why I have my hair the way I do and changed the way I look. It's stupid. I know, but it made me feel safe. I like the color. It's become a part of who I am, but it made me forget the rest of me. She shrugged. Sorry, Tonks, but I'm confused, Harry said. All of that just means none of those people were worth it, and they're not worth your tears now. Tonks shook her head. I'm not crying because of them. It's because of you, she replied, with a smile. You're not like any of them, and I feel like I've been lying to you. Harry was about to interrupt, but she held up a hand to stop him. When we first met, you said that what I was threw you off, because you felt like it was a mask that I could wear to hide things, she reminded him. Harry nodded. You were right, in a way it is a mask I wear, and I'm sorry. What I'm saying is, I don't want to hide myself from you. This, she said, as she pointed to herself, is what I look like. I've tried to hide it for so long, but you saw it anyway. Harry took her hands in his own as a fresh wave of tears fell silently down her cheeks. You don't have to apologize, he comforted. What you can do is a part of who you are, and people ruined that for you. I was wary at first. I can admit that, but I didn't really pay attention to what you are because it doesn't matter to me. The way I see you won't change because of how you wear your hair or how you look. That's what scares me, Tonks whispered. All I wanted was for someone to see me the way that you do. And now you've got that, he pointed out. What's so scary? She shook her head. I'm getting feelings for you, Harry, not just because of all of this, but everything you are. I think I was in denial until last night, or just too stupid and stubborn to realize it before, she explained sadly. I know I shouldn't, but I really can't help it. Harry squeezed her hands. I'm not very good at this kind of stuff, he admitted. I've never even been on a date. I find that hard to believe, Tonks muttered. I really haven't, Harry sighed. Apparently I'm emotionally stunted. Bloody good pair we make, Tonks replied with a forced smile. Harry snorted slightly. I care about you a lot, I know that much. When we weren't talking for those few days, I was miserable because I missed having you around, and the thought of leaving at the end of the year and not seeing you every day isn't nice, he explained with a painful expression marring his features. He shook his head. Last night, I don't know, something changed. I've never felt anything like that or how I feel when you're there. I don't know what that means, but I do know that I don't want to stop spending time with you. If wanting you around me all the time and thinking about you is what it's like to have feelings for someone, then it is the same for me, he said. So, what do we do? Tonks asked hopefully. I guess we just keep doing what we are, Harry answered with a smile. Tonks bit her bottom lip worriedly. And what if doesn't work out? Then we can at least say that we tried, he offered. That won't change anything about me wanting you around. Tonks nodded and sighed in relief. I'd like that, she agreed. Thank you, she whispered before placing a kiss on his cheek. Harry simply pulled her into his arms and enjoyed the familiar feeling from the night before of her being there. He didn't know what would happen in the future, but the thought of having her with him made the prospect of it much more bearable.